All right, we're going live.
Cool.
Waiting for it. All right, do you guys still use Zoom or do you guys use something else now? All right, we're going live.
I use Streamlabs now.
Streamlabs. Okay. Is that what Dan switched to too?
Yeah, I would suggest it. It's definitely it's a bit smoother, and you can like pin comments to the actual screen.
Yes, I've been seeing that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like those call-in shows you've been doing. It's pretty cool hearing where everyone else is at.
Thanks. Yeah. I love just like meeting new people and then giving like new people an opportunity to like express their opinions. Obviously, it's good. It's sort of a win-win for everyone because it's nice. Some people are like using that hopefully as an opportunity to like start their channel or to start like meet people or to start to network a little bit. And then, also it's nice just to hear people's opinions and perspectives that we don't always hear, like people we see in the chat. It's nice to give them some airtime.
It's honestly amazing because like, there's always people you hear talk and then you go check out their screen name and they have like a channel and it's way bigger than you realize. Like, I didn't even know this channel and they have 1,000-something subscribers. It is really eye-opening to see how like vast the Pokemon YouTube space is, because you kind of get caught in your little bubble of what like YouTube recommends you based on what you watch. And I know Dan told me that before, is you turn on incognito every now and then and a lot more pop up. So I get it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I don't know how to set all the like premieres and all that. So I literally just hit it. So I'm just gonna wait for some people to get in here.
Yeah.
I don't get too fancy with it like you guys do over there. What's up, everyone?
I'll pull it up too. Looks like there are 21 people watching, so there are some people here.
Yeah, Jake, I'm sure like 99.9% of people that watch my channel know who you are, but if you just want to do the whole, intro thing, little thing, just throw it out there. Tell them where to find you. Sure.
Yeah. So my name's Jake. I started the channel actually with my friend, but now I run the channel Pokenomics. And yeah, just like a Pokemon collector, speculator. Do mostly videos on talking about the market, having conversations about the market. And I also collect a lot of other TCGs and CCGs and non-TCGs and CCGs, is like non-sports collectible cards as well as some sports. So was in Pokemon as a kid and kind of found it again about like 6 years ago-ish. And was a silent sort of collector, I guess, speculator, investor, whatever, for about 3 years of it. And then I started getting a little bit more public, like making friends, and then started my YouTube channel maybe like 2-ish years ago, a little over 2 years ago now.
Yeah. So what, if you don't mind me talking about it, what happened to Rafi?
Oh, he's actually coming. We might do a video tomorrow, actually. We're still friends. He wanted to come to Denver Collecticon. He's hoping to come to one eventually for sure, to meet people and hang out. But it mainly was just very difficult with our schedules. We were both. I'm less busy now than I used to be, but I worked like a more than full-time job and was doing this, and he also was like the head of like a very intense startup situation, working like even more than me. He's working like 90 hours plus a week. And so we're just like very, very busy. And it was just hard so for me, probably a lot of people notice I have like a zero schedule and used to just kind of like, I would like go live or do something whenever I like had a free moment. And that just didn't work for having like a partner where we had to figure out times that work for both of us. He also has like 3 kids. So a lot of the late night times or times that would work for me just wouldn't work for him. He would be with his family. And and he wasn't like as serious about building the channel or, as I was. So
You guys are like friends. You guys are like friends in real life, basically, right?
Yeah. So he went to high school with my girlfriend.
Okay.
That's how we met. And yeah, but now we're certainly friends, and his wife as well. Yeah. Rafi's a great guy.
Cool. So kind of get back into that, like kind of your story. So, growing up, I guess, kind of after the childhood Pokemon, were you like into collecting other things, or when you got back into Pokemon, was that like your step back into collectibles?
Yeah, I didn't collect anything at all. Uh,
Okay.
Not a single thing in the middle period. Yeah, my dad is a huge collector of things, so I used to go with him to like we would go shopping for like things that he collected. So I guess I was getting some. I wasn't spending my own money, but
Right.
I was, involved in that, I guess, to some degree. But nothing that I collected personally. And then yeah, I just found my cards at my mom's house, and I like just it's huge nostalgia. I was obsessed with them as a kid. It was super cool seeing them as an adult. And then I started looking online and saw the prices, and I started watching all the different channels online, like Alpha Investment. And I just didn't. Then I started looking a little bit deeper. I read some books on collectibles and investing in collectibles and alternative assets, and a lot of theories about like 30-10, like 10-year-old 30-year-olds like to collect what they had when they were 10, and showed lots of examples of that happening and other sorts of things. And then I compared sort of the pop reports and the numbers of these cards that existed, and then the size of the franchise, and I was like, like this feels very inexpensive for how popular this is and how many people probably connect with this. And I thought that like a lot of other people would be similar to me and just like find them over the next few years or whatever, and be super into it. And when you have pop reports of like 30 or 40 cards, and you can buy them for like 50 to $100, and these are like the key cards in the entire hobby, that's just so cheap when we compare it to comic books or sports cards or Magic, even at that time, although those have all gone up too in sort of this boom. I think Pokemon in particular, not only did it go up with sort of the boom of everything and general inflation, it also was a timing thing for Pokemon, I think, in terms of just a lot of people rediscovering it and getting back into it. So I yeah, so I guess it was both I like markets and investing and speculating, like that was fun and enjoyable, and then it was also doing that with something that I like was my favorite collectible as a kid.
So you're saying when you like found your cars, kind of started researching, got back in, you went straight in to start researching pop reports and buying graded cars. Like that's where you started.
I would say within I think the first month, maybe 2 months, probably the first month, I opened a lot of modern sealed product. That was the first thing I did, which was really fun. And then I started diving more into, like research and trying to figure out, what's going on here. Channels like Gem Mint, watching him like complete PSA collection, learning about grading, like learning about those types of things. And then I started buying graded cards. And then from there, I bought graded cards, and then I started buying raw collections. I'm not exactly sure like the time period, but it was within the first 6 months for sure. I like started doing that, and I still remember my first graded card was the Blaine's Charizard from Gym Challenge.
Awesome. All right. So, like I said, we talked about a little bit before stream, but as much as you are comfortable sharing, like just kind of like at that point, starting out, from getting to where you are now, because we got in pretty much around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You have a much larger knowledge and collection than I did, so you took it a lot more serious. So I guess my question is that beginning time when you really started going heavy and built, kind of the massive collection that you have now. How are you able to kind of do that with a regular salary, regular job? And how do you still, kind of finance that today? Because I know you usually talk about that, you're still a collector first, you still keep like, I think you even said like 80% of what you grade, you're going to keep. And, so how do you still finance kind of everything you do if you still hold on to everything, if that makes sense?
Sure. I mean, so a few things. I mean, most of the stuff that I'm collecting now. So I bought a few expensive cards. Like I think I've bought maybe 4 cards this year over $1,000. But the vast majority of cards that I buy are like $25, $50, $100. or like $150, $125. And whether it's like in Pokemon, it was buying like CGC, like what I thought were like undergraded stuff to potentially crack or just hold, or some modern cards that I really like and enjoy, or a lot is like Star Wars and Superman and Batman and some Marvel stuff, like other hobbies that are not nearly as expensive, where I can actually buy some what I would consider like definitely the top 1%, or 1% of 1% of those hobbies, for around those prices. Whereas Pokemon, obviously is like millions of dollars to get like some of these crazy cards. So now I'm planning on probably trying to get some of those trophy cards at some point in my life, but I'll need to be like a lot richer for me to feel comfortable purchasing those. Like one thing I talk a lot about is like affording your collection. And like what I mean by that is like, yeah, like you need to have enough money that you're not putting yourself at too much risk, and that you're buying these things really to hold forever. If it's really for collection. And yeah, you can afford to hold it. Or now I'm always doing some flipping and speculating. So like in Star Wars, I kind of bought a bunch of that like Galaxy set, and then that Galaxy set kind of took off. So I sold some of the singles to then put it in other sets that I don't think are as good. I'm doing that currently in Pokemon. I've probably sold in the last like 6 months, I've sold probably $30,000 worth of stuff, which is enough. I mean, when you add, like, I sold a lot at the top, and I still haven't spent all that money, but I put a lot of that into stocks. But when $30,000 is enough for me to work in the way that I'm not buying like Dan's buying. Dan is buying a lot more than I am, and much bigger items than I am, a lot, and then he is flipping them a lot more into the market. I don't do as much of that. I'm definitely more of a collector, and I sometimes I flip when I think there's great opportunity, but I try to buy things more that I think are going to appreciate in the long run, and I think are really undervalued, and items that I really like. I get a lot more joy from that than just like buying under market and then flipping at market, just for me personally. But I think doing that can be really smart to either to feed yourself if you want to do this as a job, but for a lot of people, it's really smart so that they can get some money, so that they can like start to buy cards or start to put it into things that they do want to hold, whether it's for collection or investment or some combination. But yeah, so I think sometimes there's a little bit of like, I've bid $30,000 on a few cards and lost in the last like 6 months. So like if I had won that, that would have been a huge purchase. But like my biggest purchase in a long time, I bought a couple of like champion stamps for like around $6,000. And in the last 2 years, those are my two biggest purchases by far. And outside of that, it's mostly like $500 and below, like the vast majority.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that sounds a little more doable, because it sounds like you're just, from an outsider looking in, just spending tens of thousands of dollars all the time. But yeah, I guess when you're, getting a lot of those cards that are under that 500, under that $100 price point, you can get a vast amount of them and not have to spend, break the bank. So, that makes total sense. So, I mean, going back to when
there were months where I spent a lot more, particularly once I had sold. When I had sold a lot at the peak, there were a few months there. I was also buying a lot of like Superman cards and some other very expensive things, and some Marvel and some different things. And there were a few months where I spent a lot of money, but a lot of it actually had to do with buying a lot of like $500-ish cards, because I was completing sets. So it was like I'm buying, 1,000, or 1,000 $500 cards over like a couple of year period, which is $500,000. I mean, it adds up a lot when you buy that many. So I'm constantly sort of selling some, taking some money for my job, taking some money for my dividends, for my stocks. And then sometimes when I don't like the market as much, I'm selling stuff and putting it back into stocks, and I'm kind of moving stuff around. I'm figuring out as I go, honestly.
I get it. I mean, I think we all do a little bit of everything. I was wondering, like, so back like closer to the beginning,
Yeah.
did you feel, I mean, I know I know you hate this word and everyone hates it, but did you feel Pokemon was a lot better investment back then? And now you kind of see yourself as more of a collector, kind of where the market is? Or is it just because of the times have changed? Or even back then, did you still see it as more of a collection, not an investment? Because it kind of sounds like you really believed in the investment a lot more at those prices than now.
I did, but it's impossible to know is the first thing. Like I really want to say like, I don't think any of us really, really know or should have really strong opinions about like what's going to happen next. I do think there are examples of markets where they had these types of boom periods like this, and that was sort of like the highest period or like one of the highest periods. And then you have examples where like this could be a smaller boom, and then we could have an even bigger boom in the future with multiple generations. I mean, and I just don't know. I can't predict something like that. The prices though, like when you start getting into these higher prices, you have to think about like how many people can afford that,
Mhm.
you know, how many people need to be able to afford that. So my concerns are particularly with less rare items that are very expensive. You know, it's hard for those items to 10x. It's much harder for those items to 10x now than it was before. So it's just going to take that much more demand, that much more money. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think that you just should understand that it's probably it's less likely in the sense that it's going to need an even stronger show of demand and force. But it's also possible that like it just grows over time and we get there over a long period of time. I really hope the hobby just continues to grow and people really enjoy it, and you know, you see it everywhere, but I certainly can't predict the future. So
I got to ask you the modern bearish question. Do you, yeah. So, I mean, your opinion, do you think that there's actually as many people out there as kind of portrayed in our little communities here on YouTube putting mountains of sealed product away? Or do you think it's just really kind of exacerbated in, you know, the Pokemon investing sphere, like card investing sphere, where like most everyone watching a PokeRev or Leonhard are actually just going and buying a box or buying an ETB and ripping them, and maybe they keep a box, but I mean, do you really think it's, I mean, it's your opinion. Obviously, none of us know. I'm just saying, like, in your opinion, do you think it's realistic that there's a lot of people going and putting cases and cases away and tying up, you know, hundreds or thousands of dollars doing that? Or do you think people like to talk like they are or say they're investing or not really hold that long, maybe more flip? Or, you know, I mean, how many people do you think are actually long-term investing in sealed product? If you had to guess.
yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah.
is the honest answer. And like I couldn't even, but like what I would say is it's more now than there was, I think is probably very fair. So I think of it more as like there's more risk now. So they printed more, maybe 3 times to 9 times more, you know, we don't really know. But you know, they printed more and there are more people keeping it sealed. So those are both negatives. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to go up. It's just, you just sort of start with that. And then you can start to speculate, well, how much, like how much more is printed, and then how much more is being sealed. And then how much will people just give up and open it? And if you hold it for a really, really long time, will it do really well? And then you could say, well, maybe 5 years it'll do well, but then it will stop going up once it gets to like $500. You know, I have no idea, guys. Like, and I don't know how anyone could really know. And there's just a lot of unknown factors there. And so I think people who are doing that just need to be realistic with like the amount of unknowns and just comfortable with that. And then saying that they're just willing to believe that there will be enough demand in the long run, and that enough people are opening them, and enough people aren't going to have like the patience to keep it sealed, and the demand will be there down the line for people to buy from them. And I wouldn't be, I hope that happens. Like I hope, because that will mean that people are still into this and are enjoying it, you know? So it for me, it just comes from more of that, like, if we're ignoring the risk, if we're ignoring the negative, it's sort of like, then I'm concerned for anyone out there, you know? some people hear that as like, I hate it and I think it can't possibly go up, and that concerns me. Like people who respond, because then I'm like, whoa. So either those people are straight up shilling their own product, and I think a lot of them do, to be completely honest. I think a lot of these guys who come out real heated on that, they just have a lot of it and they don't want anyone to say anything negative at all. Or they're,
that works in both ways too, though.
What do you mean?
Well, I think, some people that have large amounts of, a set or an era of cards or whatever, trophy cards, they're going to speak on those trophy cards like they're the creme de la creme. It's what you have to own. Screw the base set Charizard, screw the sealed boxes, like you have to own these. And so I think the shilling goes on both. Well,
I think there's a difference between what people like better and then like ignoring objective truths. And so if you're sitting there and you're ignoring what I just said, which I believe are objective truths, and anyone out there could disagree, that you could say they're printing less and and if you want to say that they're printing less and less people are keeping it sealed, you can. I think it's unlikely. I don't know that. I mean, no one truly knows. So I just think it would defy pretty, it feels pretty objective. So now, as far as like biases, like what people like better, of course, right? And so the difference is like, if someone spends a lot of time saying, I think this is undervalued because I really like this item, that's bias. That doesn't mean the person's like shilling or manipulating necessarily, but it's bias. Like it's their bias. It's what they like. Whereas this other person over here might be like, no, I really like this modern item better or this middle generation better. But what is objective is agreeing on like basic rarity, basic print numbers, and part of what's hard is we don't know a lot of it. And so a lot of it's speculation.
Yeah.
Are there people out there who are shilling stuff? I think like people who know me, like I talk against my own interests like all the time, because I do my best to just sort of say what I think. And at the end of the day, I care most about people actually like staying in the hobby and enjoying it and not getting burned rather than the cards actually going up in value. So it kind of helps me say what I think is really going to happen rather than, shilling anything up one way or another. But guys, like if modern ballooned and became much more expensive than vintage, I'd be much richer now. I have thousands of modern, like I have 1,000 rainbow rares. Like I have so much more modern than I do vintage. Okay. So it's, and why? Because it's cheaper and because I also like it and because I, was building sets and I enjoy it. But like for me, just speaking for me personally, like if somehow the hobby completely shifted demand and interest and all of a sudden people started loving, now alt arts, I do not have that many of yet because I'm waiting for the prices to go down. So people could say like, I just hate alt art. Alt arts, you're wrong. Like all I could say is like, I really like them and you can believe me or not believe me. But for me, I like to wait 3 to 4 years, just like I did with the rainbow rares. And then I come in and buy a bunch. That's what I'm planning to do with the alt arts. May or may not work. But all I can say is like, I'm trying not to shill anything. I'm trying to just give my,
Yeah, I think the hobby, I think what a lot of people, including myself, are waiting to see is a next upturn. So like after we get through this time in the market and the economy in the world, I think if Pokemon has another boom, boom, whatever you want to call it, an upturn, and seeing how things perform. Because I know XY, Sun and Moon, a lot of people, everyone wants to lump that in, is the only reason those are up is because of Logan Paul. And so I think we need another upturn to kind of see how Sword and Shield is going to perform in the future and then how it's going to keep affecting the cards. And I think if we continue to see the same patterns, a lot of people, in my opinion, are going to trust it a lot more as like sealed product as a more of an investment. But I think right now everyone's really scared because a lot of people do think that things are only up because of Logan Paul, because a lot of it was stagnant and then it jumped with everything else and now it's still up there, but it shouldn't be. And so I do get that. Like I said, I focus a lot more on the demand side than the supply side, and everyone knows that. But what I always look at is like all these cars that are selling, like you can go and look at like the sold listings on TCG Player and eBay, and the cards and the products at price points in like XY, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, they're just selling, in the 5s, 10s, 20s a day, where you go back and nothing else is selling like that at those price points and anywhere else. And so that just tells me maybe it's just too hyped, or maybe there is just more genuine interest? Like how do you take in those numbers?
Well, I think that's always true for new sets. People are always interested in the newest stuff. They're trying to complete the newest stuff. They don't have that yet. They haven't seen it yet. It's exciting to own. I think that's true in any hobby. Prices can get you into trouble. So prices can swing a lot. And so if we're looking, I think that looking at prices too much and saying this is expensive, so it's good, or saying like this has gone up a lot, so I should buy it, like that tends, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Alex, but like that type of stuff actually tends to lose. That's why the majority of people lose money in investing. And this is in the stock market or anything. It's sort of rather than looking for value, they're looking at the prices. They're seeing what other people think, and they're kind of chasing that rather than asking, what do I think? And then what are the objective sort of, in this case, like the rarity things. Now, it is objective to say that right now the demand is this, and to say that because the demand is higher for this era, like one interesting stat would be like the demand for these are higher than the demand for this stuff a year ago, even though Pokemon is down, more is selling of this. That would show that, that could show, right, that these have had a more popular release. But I don't think these are more popular than Hidden Fates, and Hidden Fates has collapsed in price. And I think Hidden Fates people were even more excited and hyped, and then they sort of moved on from that and got bored of it once it saturated the market. So demand is very hard to predict. I'm not sitting here, with that, but
Do you track XY very closely?
I track everything somewhat, in like my Patreon monthly stuff we do, I go through every era. So I tracked, so what specifically? I mean,
really any, I guess not any of them, but like a lot of the full arts or secret rares, or like, the best hits in the set. A lot of the earlier sets obviously have like super low pops, like 20s, 30s, 40s, like of like the full art Blastoise and, Venusaur and XY base, or like that Silver Dialga. But even moving forward to like the sets that were more mass produced kind of after the boom, like even Breakthrough and, most all the sets, right? The 10s are kind of outrageous, the ones that are low pop, but even the 9s, a lot are holding up like in the hundreds, some in the 200s. And I'm looking at like, you can buy vintage cards for that. I'm just like, well, this is not a hyped era now. This is 2 eras past. Like they're still selling at those prices. So, and they're selling more often a lot of the time. So it's like, is there going to be continuing more demand going forward, and people are going to be willing to pay the same price points? That's where I get a lot of my, like, I guess, opinions from, is I look at that stuff and I see it and I'm just like, well, XY is clearly, a lot of these sets are, the booster boxes are too high to open, a lot of them, so they're not really getting opened. The popper ports are still relatively low, and they're kind of in line with a lot of the vintage sets, and they're still selling over what vintage is selling. So what do you think about that?
Say it again. So why are the XY boxes selling for so much?
Not the boxes, like the cards, like the PSA 9 10s.
Why are the XY PSA 9s 10s selling?
Yeah, they're kind of in line with, like, if you go back to like Watts, like a first gen Watsy.
Well, part of it, so I don't really know, but if I had to speculate, like, so a lot of those cards were very, very difficult to grade. The boxes are fairly difficult to find and fairly expensive. And just as you said, like, the expected value is so bad on trying to open one of those new boxes. Those cards are a lot harder to pull than regular holos. So if I open like a first edition jungle box, I'm going to pull a bunch of the best cards, right? If I open a box from XY, what are the odds that I actually pull like the Flashfire Charizard, full art, right? Extremely, extremely hard. So the expected value is like even worse, particularly right now where the holos don't really have that much value yet. Like, we might get to a time where like people start grading the holos, people start grading reverse holos, and like, I don't know. We're going to need a much more demand and much more interest, and we might get there. I hope we do. But as of right now, that's what I would say is like, what's your cheaper option? Like, people really like those cards, and there's no cheaper way to get them because the expected value of opening the box is so bad, and not much more of them are being graded or coming onto the market. And people seem to really like them. I bought some the other day. I bought some raw to grade. I just happened to get like a really good deal on a bunch of Charizards, some of the Flash Fire and some of like the Rainbow Rare Sun and Moon. And I like the cards. I think they're cool. It's the first ever full art Charizard. I mean, it's cool. And I like the set. And I think particularly with early XY, there's a lot less printed. Seems to be, and it's just very hard to grade those cards. I mean, when those cards first came out, like they were going for hundreds of dollars in PSA 10s, which was a lot more than a lot of vintage cards were, even at that time. Part of that's because, and just like we're seeing now with alt arts, like when the new thing comes out, people pay a lot of money to get it in PSA 10 and are really excited. And then some of that dies out, and then it might recover once the supply is run through the market. And depending on how much there is, it's just going to be harder for these alt arts because there's going to be like 10,000 of them graded versus 100. It's just there's a lot more, so you just be that much more demand, which could happen, which could be there. So
yeah, so another topic I thought it's fun because I got it wrong. I actually did a video recently about like comparing PSA grades and the price rises they've had over time and stuff. And I remember back when I was, buying, I was cracking boxes and I was grading cards and I was holding on to, vintage graded cards.
Yeah.
I always would value the stamp over the grade. Right. And so I know back then, 16, 17, it was pretty close on most sets. The PSA 9 first edition was around the same as the PSA 10 Unlimited.
Yeah.
And so I would always go after the stamp. But I did a whole video on it, and the Unlimited 10s had outperformed the stamps almost every time in 9. And so what do you think that says for the community in general? I mean, that people literally just value a PSA grade over real rarity. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, for me, it's not even just about rarity. I just like the first edition stamp better. It hits more for me, particularly on base set. I actually love Shadowless. So either Shadowless or first edition Shadowless a lot more. Now base set is obviously different because base set Unlimited was printed a humongous amount. But when we get into like some of these other sets, I mean, even Jungle and Fossil, where we think was a lot more Unlimited printed, if you go through the pop reports, some of these 10s, are very low, and certainly lower than their first edition counterparts. And some of those cards are going for very high amounts. I'm not sure how deep the market is for that.
Yeah.
I think I know some of those cards are being bought by people like Gemmint Pokemon, and I don't know how many, but like, and some other guys I know who are completionists. They understand the rarity, the difficult. That is, believe it or not, paying like $1,000 or $2,000 for some of those cards. That's like their cheapest way of actually getting that card, because I mean, they could buy some 9s and try to crack them or regrade. A lot of those guys just don't do stuff like that. Or they can they're not going to like open packs.
Right.
They get like a perfect 10 Unlimited. It's just not going to happen. So, and these guys are really collectors. So there is genuine collector interest there. I think there is also some like investor speculator of like Unlimited's rarer, and so it should be better. It's very personal opinion, right? I mean, this, at the end of the day, this stuff is very, very personal opinion. Do you prefer the first edition stamp in a 9, or do you prefer the perfect PSA 10 grade? I'm with you, Alex. I've always preferred the PSA 9 first edition stamp, because for me, I like PSA 10s, but I'm not fundamentally a PSA 10 collector. I'm fundamentally a card collector who just wants my favorite cards in as high as grade as I can afford. So I prefer to get the exact card I want rather than like a perfect grade of like a different card or slightly different. But I'm not trying to like tell anyone what to like. And so we had this debate in my Discord about it. And like, one person is really likes the PSA 10 Unlimiteds and loves the rarity and likes the low population chase. And his logic is sound. It's just a difference of sort of like what you value, I guess. But as far as speculating, like what are people going to value in the long run? Like people who bet on Unlimited 10s won. People like us who did more. And I've said this, like that was probably the biggest area I missed was Unlimited 10s, because I could have bought some and I didn't, because similar to you, I just preferred the PSA 9 first editions. And I was wrong about that from a market standpoint, so.
I think most people were. I mean, I guess people who saw it coming, they made out like bandits, but I mean, I even think I remember, Scott talking about it way back in the day, like 5 years ago. And he even said that the stamps were always going to hold more value than the grade. And it's just so strange to see it play out this way, that we've just kind of collectively as a community have put so much emphasis on these grades. And I think we're just almost getting away from like you always talk about the rarity of the actual cards, and we're just chasing all these grades. And it's like, well, sometimes the card isn't even rare, and you're just wanting a card in a grade where a raw, like, near mint copy, I might grade a 7 or an 8 of a card is actually a lot harder to find than a PSA 10 of a modern card. So, paying these $500-$700 for these modern cards, when you can get this card that maybe has, I don't know, 1,000 copies in existence still. I mean, it doesn't correlate.
I mean, we see people paying $1,000 for amazing rare black labels, right? Right. So it shows, right, like that condition rarity versus absolute rarity. Like people really, some people, I don't know how deep the market is. Again, we don't know how deep the market is for these things, but there are people out there in this current market who really, really value condition rarity over the absolute rarity of the card itself. And I like both. And I think I can shift sometimes. Like I'm not, some people are like hating on grading, say it's just useless. Like they don't, like whatever, like people are very entitled to all their opinions, and they can say them. Like, I'm not going to be swayed. I've been in this hobby long enough that I've sort of like, I can sort of form my own opinions and try to like collect what I really enjoy. And then I listen, because I'm also trying to speculate and invest and predict like what's going to happen. But with stuff like this, I feel like it's so hard. But the real lesson, I think, is it goes back to what I talk about, which is how difficult demand is to predict. Like the rarity is there. Like, the objective thing, that this one has better condition rarity, but this one has more absolute rarity. What wins out? A lot of it might have to do with the narrative. Now, if you were in the hobby and you heard Scott saying that, right, and other people pushing that narrative, and then you heard a lot of people like agreeing and nodding, but you didn't feel that way. And that's how I felt about like level X's, about Top Zone, about a lot of things. That's why I went really heavy in middle generation when everyone was saying WotC was the only thing that could ever have value. I went really heavy in Japanese because everyone said English was the only thing that could have value. So I managed to do that. Unlimited, I didn't do because I agreed.
Yeah.
Basically it was like, I feel the same way as these guys. Whereas with the other stuff, I felt differently. And so my mindset was, here are these influencers and content creators, I don't think manipulating the market, but just telling what they think. And then a lot of people sort of nodding their head.
Yeah.
Then you can find the value right there. Then it's like, oh, they're missing something. A lot of people are saying they think a certain way, but really it's just because that's what the current narrative is. I feel that way about certain cards I'm collecting in Pokemon. People are really negative on them right now, but I don't feel that way. And I've seen narrative shift in the hobby, and then prices more reflect what I feel they should be. But I can also be wrong. Like, we can all be wrong, but that's what value investing is you kind of making those assessments and then going with sort of your analysis or whatever.
And also, if you're right, one's pretty good, it makes up for, 2, 3, 4 wrongs a lot of the time. Sure. So,
and I'm someone who I really am very cautious. And so I would rather, I tend to pass up good things for like home run. Like I look for really, really good things. And that way, and I try to buy really, really low amounts so that I also have really low downside. So I'm looking like very low downside, very high upside type things. That's what I'm always looking for.
So you're looking for home run. So, I mean, we got 75 people in here now. I guess we're a little into this. So I guess we can ask the hard hitting question is that why you hate sealed product?
Sure. Hate sealed product, right? I mean, I have so much sealed product behind me in my videos. It's kind of funny. I enjoy sealed product. I enjoy putting it up. I think with sealed product, I certainly like, there's zero competitive advantage with sealed product. Like, sealed product is sort of like the effort I put into the hobby, the analysis, the trends, the time, like that doesn't help me in sealed product. Like sealed product is like, do you want to buy Evolving at 95 or Chilling Reign and Battle Styles at 72 and 68? Those were the choices presented to me. I literally just bought a decent amount of both at those prices because I felt both of those prices were pretty good prices. And I had some extra cash flow, some money to spend that I like didn't see something that I liked better. And which one's done better? Like Evolving Skies has done better in this short. Which one will be better in a few years? I'm not really sure. Do you buy the better set at a higher amount? Do you buy the worse set at a lower discounted amount? Which one will do better in the long run? I don't know, right? There are arguments for both.
I mean, what do you think about like the people like that are more heavy in sealed product or even like almost 100%, like, obviously like Alpha Investments, like Cole Trainer Ryan, I know PokeRev said in like one of the live streams of PK that he like 99% of everything he has is sealed. So like, I mean, what do you think about like even like some of the bigger guys, just having sealed? Is that, you think that's a mistake?
Well, I mean, Ryan's not, I really don't think Ryan is at all an investor. He might say that, I don't know where his mindset is. Certainly these days, like, I feel like Ryan collects what he really likes and really enjoys. And he has an insanely valuable collection. He doesn't really have to worry too much, about, he can spend some money on some fun modern product to open or not.
Well, yeah, I mean, now, but like back then he was buying that
back then.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask him. I think it was just because he liked it a lot. I'm not sure he thought that it was going to be a better investment than graded cards. In some cases it's been comparable. In other cases it's done a lot worse, depending on like if you were buying raw stuff or grading stuff yourself or buying like some of the more niche, like low pop stuff, you would have done much better than if you bought like all sealed product. Now, if you bought all sealed product, you would have done extraordinarily well. It's like everything is like gone up a humongous amount. And then for him, like he bought a lot of that stuff super cheap at store. Him and Rev got a lot of their stuff in that one deal that they got at that unit, and they got stuff even at that time way under market. So who knows, maybe if he had never gotten that deal, he would have been more of like a card collector and not a seal collector. And that put him down that sort of journey. Oftentimes when we get into something, we kind of keep doing it, I find, with people. But as far as, so what was your question? Your question was just like, in general, like, do I think sealed collectors are like making a mistake?
Yeah. I mean, do you think they're making a mistake, or do you think it's just because I've gotten into this a couple times in some videos with people is, people kind of make that comment of like, well, yeah, but you could, I'm asking Pokemon Gym Hero in the chat. I know he's been on your channel. I mean, he makes that comment to me all the time. Like, well, yeah, but if you just take the time to, buy collections and grade and do all this stuff, it's like, well, people don't have that much time. But then I get the backlash of, well, they're watching a 2-hour YouTube video. It's like, yeah, but that's not the same. You can be cooking, you could be driving in your car. Like, you don't really have to be engaged to hear a video, but like to do real research, to study the pop reports, the sales, to like get a broad idea of what's going to happen, and make those, actually go out and find those deals. And it takes a lot of work. So, I mean, as far as like the effort put in compared to like, the reward, do you think it's worth it or viable for everyone to do, or worth it?
Well, that's a very personal question for people to think about out there. But
well, here, imagine this. Imagine you're you got, let's say, I know you don't, let's say you got a wife and you got a few little Jakes running around and they got sports to go to, and, you may not have time to do all the research and stuff you're doing. So at that point, with like the average American lifestyle, do you think that's still like a viable option?
What I would probably do, so I really don't know. I would hope, because I enjoy this a lot, that I would like still have time to do it. If I really didn't have time to do it, and I would just be investing in the stock market probably and not Pokemon at all. Now, if I liked investing in sealed product and putting some and storing it, if I enjoyed it, I would probably do some of that still, because maybe it's really not that time consuming. Maybe I would buy like some graded cards because it's not that time consuming, but just do some of what I'm doing, but not that much. It's also like I have years of like doing it. So it's not like I'm just going to like start again and like lose all of that knowledge or all of like, or all of the experience doing that. So I think even if I spent like 20 minutes a week doing this, I could find some things, and put all my sniper bids in and stuff. But if I was brand new, I'm just not sure like why you'd be investing in Pokemon if you don't really enjoy it. This is maybe where you and I, like, I don't see Pokemon or Pokemon seal collecting as like your optimum like investment financial like thing. I view it for like as a fun speculative thing that you can probably, you know, potentially make money on, and you like really enjoy it, and it's also like a hobby. And so if you enjoy sealed collecting or sealed speculating or sealed investing over doing it with like the single cards, you should do that probably. But I do think if you're trying to like start a business, you want to be doing everything. You know, Dan and Nick and these guys, because they're in with distributors and they get good pricing, like, you know, they might make, you know, might have made $30,000 or so on just immediately flipping. They're not investing in it. They're immediately flipping and selling, you know, modern sealed.
Right.
And then they're also doing like Dan's buying his like $10,000 vintage boxes and then breaking them and selling them for like 11,000 each after he's
or pulling Charizards out of the packs. Yeah.
Yeah, doing ridiculousness. But you know, doing these other sort of like flipping margin plays, they're not like they might also be investing, but like their income right now is either realizing like capital gains that they've already made on their investments or flips that they didn't end up selling. And so they were fortunate to like hold it through the boot, you know, who knows like exactly what for what person. But the new money they're making is not really on investing. It's on flipping and reselling, you know?
Yeah. Well, let me challenge you on that a little bit though. So like when you were buying like back in the day in 16, 17, when you were really loading up, I mean, when you were buying multiple copies of a whole bunch of stuff, I mean, can you really say you really enjoyed and you wanted to collect everything you were buying, or you were buying it because you saw the end consumer it was going to be willing to pay more for that down the road? Because I think that's what a lot of people who get in sealed product. It's not that they enjoy having stacks of boxes. They may enjoy having like one of those booster boxes or ETBs on their shelves, but it's not they enjoy having stacks of boxes, but they see that the end consumer is going to be willing to pay more for it down the road. So it makes sense.
Well, I think it's hard to separate those things. I also enjoy investing and in speculating. So
Right.
like, even if I think I'm going to make less money in this than the stock market, I might get more joy putting a bunch of sealed boxes in my closet because I feel more in control of that and I like it better than I like stocks. So even if I don't think it's like the best financial decision, I think it's a decent financial decision maybe, and it's fun and enjoyable. So there's some sort of hybrid. Why I was buying those like single or like lots of things, like again, very hard to like sort out and remember on any given purchase, like how much of this was like, I hate this. It was never, I like dislike this card, but I just think it's going to make me a lot of money, or like why. I honestly do not. I'm someone like Dan will buy things that he thinks are just really stupid and bad. I will not. Like
But as a collector, you're not buying like 20 of a single card in PSA 10 because you want to collect it. Like you're going to want to sell those copies in the future, right?
I mean, honestly, like it was really fun having like 8 out of 10 of a card in the world, or 8 out of 12 of the card in the world. Now, did I hope it would go up and maybe I would sell some of it and make some money? And part of the fun was like thinking that might happen. I mean, why do people like having a bunch of sealed product? Like part of it is probably because it makes them feel like, you know, I've got all this money in the closet, or I've got all this like valuable goods, and like what could be in there, you know. It's not, this is where you have to be careful of like, are you optimizing? Are you really doing like time value money optimization? Or are you doing like a hobby that's sort of like a hybrid side hustle that you also really enjoy, that you can make some money on? And
well, here, that actually brings me to the next question, which let's get your opinion on it. So do you think it's wrong though to expect higher than average gains in something like this? Like higher than, you know, I mean, I know it's always compared to like in traditional investments, but like in my opinion, I'll give my opinion first. Like, I think you should expect higher than average gains because of what we talked about. You're taking higher than average risk. Like you're putting something into something that's inherently speculative. And so it's the same thing as investing in like a you know, low cap stock or even a penny stock. Like you're investing in a, you know, startup company, basically. You're going to expect more money. So the same thing comes with Pokemon. It's like, well, if I'm investing in a speculative asset, I expect those, you know, higher gains. I'm not expecting 8 to 10% a year. So do you think that's like a dangerous mindset, or do you think it's kind of warranted for the amount of risk you're taking on?
gosh, I really don't know. I'm sorry. Like, I guess my answer is I don't know. So in that sense, it would be way too much of a risk for me. Like I would want to be way more certain in Pokemon for me to be putting like, for me, like the reason I feel comfortable spending on Pokemon, my stocks make me feel safe. I'll be completely, blunt and honest, right? Like my stock portfolio and where that's at and my goals to get it to a certain point, like that makes me feel safe enough to like risk more on this type of stuff. Like some of the really speculative plays I'm making right now, which I'm very bullish on, and I think could make me way more money than I could make in the stock market, right? But the only reason I'm willing to do that at the end of the day is because I have things that are like in multinational companies that have great moats that I really think, Pokemon could really die out. Like the demand and the love and the joy for this stuff and even cards in general could really die out. And I really hope that doesn't happen. I'm not predicting that's going to happen like anytime soon. It's just something that would make me not want to put too much in any of this. And if you are going to do it, I would want to diversify as much as possible in as many games as possible and other collectibles. And I would really want to like research a lot of things. And, but again, everyone's in a different
now market. Like, is that because of like where we're at now? Or are you talking like you had that same mindset, 6 years ago?
Even then. So the only reason I was able to be so aggressive back then is I already had the stock portfolio at a good place where I felt comfortable with it. And so I was able to actually sell a little bit of stock and put it into this. And so I honestly, if I didn't have
hold on. It doesn't
if I didn't have that, and I wouldn't have done it. And I would have missed out on all the gains.
Well, hear me out though. Hear me out.
Sure.
We're in our early 30s.
Okay.
If you never took any risks in the stock market, how would you, with an average income, how would you be able to grow that to such a large amount where you feel safe, betting tens of thousands on Pokemon? You know what I'm saying? Like,
how did my stock portfolio get to where it was?
Yeah, you'd have to take risk, right? You couldn't just put it in safe companies that make 8-10% a year and pay a dividend.
So I've told you this before on a live. I'm not sure if you remember, and I guess I will repeat it again for the internet audience, even though sometimes I'm uncomfortable sharing. But like, so I saved pretty much everything that I made. I also made quite a bit of money playing poker in high school and when I was younger. And I inherited $250,000 from my grandmother. And my dad created this portfolio for me. And my dad's a financial advisor. And then working with my dad at the age of when I was 14, I started to learn and started to invest, and I was putting my money into it also. So now $250,000 plus, and I put more than that in myself, given if people know what the market has done. All you would have, if I put my money in index funds, now I've outperformed index funds slightly, not even that much.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Right.
Because the stock market has in the last, 12 years gone up a lot. So, we're talking like more than triple, right? From since I put in that initial investment, and I've been putting in more over time. And I put more in, after selling some Pokemon and bringing it back. So I don't love talking about my personal financial situation, but like, I'm very clear. One thing I do want everyone to know is that it's a combination of being in a very lucky financial situation, inheriting money from a family, not being in debt, and having that safety that allowed me to feel comfortable enough to take this much of a risk and go all in. And if I hadn't had all those pieces in place, I would not have felt comfortable doing it. And I would have missed out on a lot of that. But what I would argue with people, or what I would say, is that like, it's all the more reason why you should get yourself in a really good financial situation so you can take risks that like you really believe in. Like, now everyone can't get there. I had a huge leg up in life. But I also worked my freaking butt off and ate ramen for 8 years and saved every shred and put like all of my extra money into this and other things. So, but that is my story. I'm definitely someone who got very lucky and fortunate also, and had quite a leg up.
Yeah. That wasn't, I already we talked about that in less detail, but that wasn't the answer I was hoping for. I was hoping you'd be like, no, and I was back then, I was taking risks. Like, okay. So
I still was taking a large risk. I mean, I was making probably I think I made roughly like $50,000, $60,000 a year as a social worker during those years. And some of the time I spent living at home. Those years I was putting like 30,000 into like stocks and collectibles. And then there were other years, there was one, and then in 2020 or 2019 going into 2020, around then, I sold $80,000 of stock and I put it all into Pokemon. And if I hadn't done that, and I also bought a few really key lots that ended up like, $2,500 lot that like after grading is worth like 300,000 after all of the explosion. So like there were two lots somewhat like that. And then it was also putting that money and selling that, and just my extreme bullishness and my willingness to take a risk. And I was like talking to my dad at the time. I was telling everyone, and listen, it ended up being right really, really suddenly, but I was telling everyone, I'm going to be this is a millionaire idea. Like these are going to be worth millions. I'm going to try to buy up multiple copies of all of these cards. There aren't that many of them. I think it's going to explode. And I might've been really stupid and just gotten lucky to some extent, or I might've like, really done my research, really understood it, and also just gotten lucky with the timing. But that is my story. And I did believe strongly in the market at that time. And I felt the fervor. And I guess I just believed in the idea that I felt this way about these cards. There was going to be so many other people who were like me, who was probably going to feel the same way. And there just weren't going to be enough that would go around. I could not predict the shutting down, of society, of people, going online into online communities, getting stimulus checks, all the stuff that sort of exploded it. Now, if I had had a few more years, I would have been way further, because I probably would have done that a few more times. Like if I had 2 or 3 more years before this boom happened, I would have like the largest collection, or one of the largest collections in the world. If, maybe even the largest, or like close to it. I know some people have like insanely, but that's how bullish I was. And you only needed to spend $80,000 a year to accomplish that, or 50 to 80,000. That's the thing. Like
That's
people
a
who
lot
are
of money.
and at that time it was a humongous amount. I mean, we're talking about the Pikachu Illustrator. Like I could have bought multiple Pikachu illustrators over a few different years. But I was very aggressive. I was probably more aggressive than I was, really pushed it to the absolute limit. And it ended up working out. And I also felt the downside was so low, which was a big part of it. A lot of the prices I was paying. So I felt like I could, if it didn't work out and I grew tired of these things, I could probably sell it for about what I had bought it for eventually. So.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it a ton of times. I mean, I don't think it was luck. I don't think any of our situations were luck. I think a lot of us had the same mindset that exactly like you said. I think you mentioned that book, like the 10, 30 thing. Like everyone when they're 30 want to collect what they had when they were 10. Like I think all of us had that same mindset. We're all getting back into these. Everyone else is going to have this mindset. I better buy this stuff up before everyone else wants it. We're all going to be making money. They're going to be able to buy it. I think the only luck factor is just that time frame. I mean, I was planning on 10, 20, 30 years and it happened in 2 years. It's like, it was, the timing was luck, but I don't think I think the movement was going to happen at some point, no matter what.
I don't know. I mean, it's impossible for us to know what that would have looked like. And if Logan Paul, if influencers, if the pandemic didn't have, like what that would have looked like, how long it would have taken, no idea.
Well, I mean, it was already, I mean, most all like the base unlimited, all the unlimited boxes were already up, significantly from when I got in, like early 15 up until before Logan, but everything was kind of significantly up. It wasn't up exponential, but you'd like doubled your money on a lot of the stuff already in just like a 4-year time frame. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was kind of what we were, I was expecting to continue to see in the future. Every maybe 5 years, you double your money or something. And so I think it just got sped up. But I mean, I don't think having that mindset and kind of taking those actions was luck, if that makes sense.
I think, yeah, I mean, it worked out amazingly. I should have sold everything. I should have told all my friends and family to sell everything and put it right. But like in reality, when I look back on it, even though it worked out so well, I went very aggressive, and it was quite risky, even for my current financial situation. Now, I also like just have faith in myself that like if I want to make, and maybe it will sound arrogant or whatever, but like if I really want to make money, I can go pick a career or do something or work really hard in something, and I can make 100K or 200K in a few years. Like, and so if I lose this, like I'm young, and I think that this is why I say like financial advice is so personal, and why we can't get financial advice online. Like every person is in a very different situation, has a different education, has a different amount they're earning, and all of that's going to impact the type of risk that you should probably take or are willing to take. But yeah, it was risky and it worked out. But I also, yes, I mean, I studied. Like I knew every pop report. You could have named any card and I could have told you exactly the pop report, and I could have told you the exact price for the last 3 years. So, I mean, I studied this. I knew this market better than any person, or as good as any person, because you couldn't know it, just those types of things any better, because I was obsessive about it. And if I'm going to put that type of money in it, I'm going to know every inch, and then I'm going to know and compare it to these other hobbies and the pop reports and these other hobbies. But even with all of that, it was a huge upsurge in demand. Now I outperformed probably, most people or a lot of people, because I did that research. So I picked and went heavy into stuff that actually outperformed other things. And I sold the stuff that has fallen the least for the most part. Now there are a few things I missed, like Unlimited, like there are always going to be things you miss, but on balance, all of the research and the effort helped me maximize my gains and minimize my losses. But the gains and the losses didn't have to, like the huge gains didn't have to happen. I didn't control the pandemic or Logan or these things. So that's kind of how I think of it, is like, you can give yourself the best chance, but there's so many factors that you can't control.
So during the boom, Pokemon was your highest portion of your net worth, right? During the boom.
Say that again.
I said during the boom, Pokemon was definitely like your highest portion of your net worth at that point.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think for all of us, I mean, I think it had to be. I mean, when everything went like that, it's nothing else in your life went 1,000% up.
Yeah.
So what's your current take on, before getting some questions, I mean, obviously this is just opinions, no advice. What's your take on the market right now? I mean, do you think it's holding up well? Do you think is this bad? Do you think it's worse than people expect, or better than people expected? What are you thinking?
People are trolling me in chat. Very nice. I'm sorry, I got distracted by the trolling.
They're trolling you. I thought I was getting trolled. I saw Pokemon Gym Hero and Jonathan Murphy in here. I know they both give me trouble a lot.
It's amazing how, whatever, people are ridiculous. All right, sorry, ask that again, Alex.
No, just like the current, like, I guess the whole market, but especially the more modern market. I know a lot of people are getting pretty freaked out, but I mean, when I look at just the day-to-day sales, just eBay TCG Player, when I look at, I mean, prices holding up compared to like other markets, I mean, I'm still pretty confident. I like where everything's at. I mean, downturns have to happen, but I just think during this downturn, I think things are holding up relatively well. I mean, what's your take on everything? Are you still relatively bullish? Or are you starting to pull back a little bit on Pokemon and throttle in other places more?
Yeah, so I'm it's hard, man, because I'm so hopeful that it will do well in the long run, because I enjoy it and I feel like I'm biased that like I'll go to dinner parties all the time where nobody's ever heard of Pokemon. Like it's like, if you're surrounded by people who love this stuff, it's like, yes, but like, how many more people out there are going to replace that? How many new people are going to come in? Are new generations really going to like it that way? Are they really connecting it with the way that we did? Like, it's just stuff that I'm just not super sure about. In the short run, the only really concerning thing I see is volume. And I've been talking about this on my Patreon for months. that prices have been really good, generally speaking. Yes, there are things that have continued to fall, mostly things that there's been a lot more supply. The things that have been hit and continue to hit are the stuff that more and more supply just continues to whack at it and bring it down, or items that just haven't sold in a really long time, that this is the first time they've sold in like the down period, and then everyone panics. And it's like, no, like, yeah, like everything has fallen 30 to 40 to 50% in this category, and this item just hasn't sold in like a year. So that's why that's happening.
Well, I mean, I think things fell from the high, but I'm just saying, like, this year, you know, I think everything is kind of stabilized from the massive drops from the peaks. But I mean, I think now things are stabilizing, and while things are, you know, still negative in the world and worldwide, everything's kind of falling and I mean, not recession, but downturn, I guess. I think Pokemon's holding up relatively well, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as I said, like the prices are not concerning me. It's a little bit the volume slowing down. I'm just carefully watching the volume, trying to get a sense, talking to like my friends and people who sell a lot to get a sense, like, how much is the volume decreasing? Where's the volume decreasing? Is it decreasing across the board? Is it decreasing more in certain areas and other areas? Certainly Pokemon's right now much bigger, much hotter. There's much more being sold, and there's much more interest than before the boom right now. So even with the volume decreasing and the prices decreasing, we're still in a really good spot. Of course, you have a lot of fear. Like, there's a lot of fear in you know, that we're heading into a recession, that we're in a recession, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that this is just the start of the pain in the variety of markets. And I think you can look and you can say, well, you know, the NASDAQ's fallen 25%, you know, the S&P is 15% now, or whatever, now about 15%. It's like, we can say that, and we can be like, well, I have this like Pokemon card that I've been holding for the last like 4 months that's the exact same price. It's like, of course, like you're definitely going to find things like that. But how much is the liquidity on that slowed? And then how much does it take for the liquidity to slow on that, for that card to now really be worth zero, basically, to drop from like $5 to zero because no one's willing to buy it because there are too many of them, and then people undercut the price down to $1. It can happen quickly in these types of markets. These markets do not function like the stock market. Like the optimization of the stock market is so quick, so we see prices fall really, you know, in a very optimized way. It can take a little while for some of this stuff with that volume issue. But I do think that, like, I'm also very carefully watching the supply side and how many of these cards come up for auction, how many of these cards actually are being listed. And that has also slowed down. So there's this interesting, it's an interesting moment. I really don't know what's going to happen, is the truth, Alex. And I'd be lying, but because I don't know, it makes me cautious. So for me, I would look for really good under the market cards that you think are like the best. I would not rush into anything in this market. And I would, you know, make sure I'm looking and studying other markets. Like, there's other markets I like better now, you know, in the card space, if I'm being completely honest. But I know it's not what people want to hear. People just want to hear, yeah, like, it's great and you're definitely going to be fine, you know, but I don't feel confident. But I'm also, I really don't have any superhuman powers. None of us do. So it's just me studying all of the numbers does not help me predict demand. It just helps me understand, like, how much supply we have now relative to what it was at before. I don't know that demand piece. So
do you ever catch any of my videos ever?
I've watched your videos. Yeah. I have not watched some of the latest ones.
Okay, I made a video recently about, like, the PSA $18 grading, and, you know, anyone who hasn't, especially didn't go through the Logan Paul boom and grade stuff, now get it back or do it in the past. But I mean, what do you think about this time that's going to be coming up in 6 to 9 months, where this mass amount of cars going to get graded? I mean, I'm trying to tell people that, you know, it's impossible when you do this, because you're going to look at these prices and you're going to buy these cars. And you're going to say, well, the 9's going for 50, the 10's going for 110, 120. It's a no-brainer. I should grade this at $18. And I think when a lot of these cars get back, that 9 is going to go from 50 to in the 20s. The 10's going to be maybe 40 or 50. and a lot of people are gonna be really unhappy. And I just think it's really dangerous time where people are just sending in like stacks, mass amounts of these modern cards or box promos or tin promos, and like the Greninja Gold Star, like all these cards. And I don't know. I mean, I get the whole, I'm only in this card $1, $2, $3. It's only $18, but then you got the shipping to PSA, you got the insured shipping back to you, you got your fees when you sell, your shipping when you sell. I mean, realistically, you're probably in a lot of these cards $30 or so after you're out of them. And so if you get 9s, you're losing a good amount of money. If stores or people are doing this on large levels, that could lead to hundreds and thousands of dollars possibly if you if you get that many wrong. So what's your take on the less like, not vintage, not like even like an XY Sun Moon, not even like a top rarity, maybe even the alt arts, but like any like second tier, third tier cards people are grading right now?
Yeah, so lots of risk. We just have no idea how many people are going to grade. We have no idea how much is going to come back of this stuff, and we have no idea how deep the demand is at any card's current price, including high value cards, including vintage cards, that there's going to be a lot more graded. So one thing I do want to say, which might be helpful, is a little more actionable, other than just like, I don't know what's going to happen, is like, what would it take for me to be confident again? Might be a good way to look at it. Like, why was I so confident a few years ago? Because I was like the most bullish guy I knew a few years ago. And why am I so like on the fence right now, or sort of like unsure of what's going to happen? This is what I need. This is what I would like to see. What I want to see is the global market, the global, recession issue. I want to see that get to a better place. I'm uncomfortable putting lots of money into anything this risky during that type of time. Now, that could be really stupid. People come out with all sorts of arguments like, these are not attached to like regular markets, and these other like regular markets are going to do bad, but collectibles are going to do good because people cling to like things that make them happy and give them nostalgia and all sorts of things. And then people make the counter argument that like the first thing people give up is like their unnecessary cardboard. Whatever. I really don't know. It just, the riskier the market, the more I fear putting money into it. And why I think this market is risky is because, yes, at the end of the day, I think this is a hobby and a collectible, fun, enjoyable thing, and is not something that is like a core necessity in people's lives, even if we get pretty addicted to it. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. But what I would look for is that issue to get better. Okay. Now, I was buying pretty heavily about 3 months or 6 months ago, before recession anxiety started happening, because I felt there was a decent enough chance that we were at the bottom, given my financial situation, that now is a really good time to get really aggressive.
That's the same time I started buying again.
Yeah. So that was around the time that the negativity was strong enough, and I didn't see real reason to be that negative, that I felt it was a good time. Then when the recession news, now prices haven't really dipped much from then, but sales volume has slowed and fear has increased. And you could end up, if you bought a lot right now, you could end up doing really well. Like, I really don't know. But it's a little bit too risky and uncomfortable for me with all of this stuff. And I don't really know how this market does in recessions, it being this large, and how it's going to do in a recession. I know we've been through, 2008, people talk about, but like, Pokemon was so tiny then. I'm just not sure it really is the same sort of thing at all. And so I'm a little concerned about that. So I want to wait for that. And then the other thing I want to see, I just want to see stable prices for a while and for a lot longer. And I want to see sales volume to slightly tick back up. If I see that, and it's not because like an influencer or something big, I could be very aggressive in this market again. So for me, it's never about like, I'm giving up Pokemon's a bad investment forever, or Pokemon, and it's not really about price as much as it is about like, yeah, my sense of like where the market is in that sort of trajectory. And it still spooks me a little bit right now with that sort of stuff. So like I can't give people, but personally, what I'm doing, given my current financial situation, is like, I'm buying some things steadily that I think are really good, and that I'm getting a good value, but overall I'm not being like super aggressive.
Well, I think you left out the other part too, is, I mean, the big factor is the stock market. I mean, in 19, I mean, I'm not saying it made sense but the stock market was so high and so inflated that, it was made more sense to put money into Pokemon, because it's like, well, this stuff isn't really as inflated yet. Now it's like the stock market's been beat up so bad. It's like, well, it can make sense to buy a lot of these companies right now. Like, I mean, Pokemon, I see probably being flat for a little while. Don't know if anything crazy is going to happen when the stock market jumps. I mean, I've been putting a lot more money in the market right now and less into Pokemon, just because there's that opportunity. But if the market jumps up 10,000 points, it's like, well, maybe I'll go back to Pokemon. It's just, it's just, it's all those different factors that weigh into it. So I think in 19, that's one of the big reasons. It's like the market had ran for however many years, something teen years at that point. And it's just like, well, yeah, at this point, we're anticipating a correction. So it's like, well, maybe we'll look for collectibles or other areas, because I don't want to keep dumping money in at the top.
So I completely agree with you. And I think that what you said there is so important, which is that the stock market, so some people will come out and say the stock market has fallen 30%, so it's a worse investment than Pokemon. In reality, it's probably a better investment than Pokemon, because it's dropped 30% and Pokemon hasn't dropped as much right now.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that it is forever. And those are two different things. So now it's a lot more complicated than that. Like, things could drop 80% and still be a terrible buy because they're heading to zero. So like, just because something has fallen a lot does not make it good value. But if you think something has really good value at a current price and then you see it go down quite a bit, it should make it more attractive to you, not less attractive, unless your analysis is somewhat changed. And this is why people become prisoners of prices and trends rather than understanding value investing. So,
and that's the other thing, is like, you can always read every scenario two ways. You can read it as, oh, well, now the stock market's tanking and crypto's tanking, so all those people who made all their money in that stuff, they don't have it to throw in Pokemon anymore. Or you can read it as, well, the reason the sales volume and things are slowing is because those same people are putting more money into those investments right now because they are down. And then if they do go back up, maybe that money comes back to Pokemon, their regular monthly, wherever they invest into things. So I just think you can always read it both ways. And hey, if you wanted to touch on anything else, go ahead. If not, we can jump into some questions. It's up to you.
Sure. I'm down to have questions.
Cool.
I would challenge people. So people who think that I hate on Modern, I'm really interested, because I think there are probably some people watch this channel feel that way. I want to hear a calm, not a rude, offensive, like, you're a hypocrite, or like, you back, like, just like, I want to hear just a calm argument or question. I'm interested to see.
I used to think the same thing, remember?
Yeah, and I'm just interested to see, and maybe you still do, Alex, that and again, I might be biased towards vintage and the fact that I like vintage better. I do like vintage better than Modern. I also have thousands of Modern cards. I like Modern. I'm not sure, like, I grew up with vintage as a kid, so I have a nostalgic connection to it, which possibly over biases me to it, versus people who like didn't grow up with it or don't have a connection and they prefer Modern, whatever.
Well, let me ask you this though, like, because you have pretty similar, the same time frames. I mean, I'm 32. How old are you?
30, about to turn 34, 33.
Well, so pretty close. So, I mean, we had the same pretty much time frame though. As we loved vintage as a kid, we got out, we got back in 15, 16, whenever. So do you not, I mean, you said you opened a lot of Modern product and you got in, as I did. So do you not have any, like, maybe not as strong a feeling, but any feelings towards like the XY era? Because that's that's where I'm at with XY. Like, that's why I like collect and I guess quote unquote invest in XY heavily, is because I have more nostalgia for XY than I do Sun and Moon or Sword and Shield. So do you have any nostalgia just from when you got back in, or is it all just vintage?
I mean, from a purely subjective point, like, my opinions change. Like, the things I like tend to change. At this moment, I'm kind of bored of Pokemon. Like, collecting, I'm not collecting it that much. I'm into some other things right now. But in a month from now, I'll probably be back to buying and enjoying Pokemon. But like, that isn't like like, I don't do any like investment speculating on sort of like what I happen to be like enjoying that day, or more into. I can burn out on any era, or any type of card, or, so, but what do I like the best? I mean, yeah, it's the vintage overall. Particularly like base set more than anything else, probably. And then the middle era stuff, some of the early TCG, some of the early Japanese stuff, some trophies, And then probably the alt arts and the shiny cards are probably like my favorites right now in terms of like what I enjoy and what I enjoy looking at, what I find myself looking at the most.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll take the questions, or if anyone wants to present that argument to Jake. But I just think same thing about Jake. I think I pretty much got him figured out now. Is not that he hates modern sealed. It's that I think it's too boring for him. I think he needs to be in the trenches and, like he said, using his skills, finding those undervalued cards, or, speculating and doing all these different things, where I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but sealed product is almost too boring for you just to buy a K and sit on it and say, okay, there it is, I'm done. And it just kind of leaves any skill or research or any, knowledge you have above someone out of it. So it's just doesn't make sense for you, pretty much, right?
I think I can also do a lot better. It's not just that. I also think I can do a lot better doing mostly other stuff. But I do buy some sealed when it comes up at a really good value.
All right. So let's see. Puzzle Observer. Yeah, I have a question. Do blind people even know when they wake up in the morning? Yes, because they can smell and hear it. All right. Next up. Let's see. What do you fellas think is the direction of raw single cards from Sword and Shield block here in the next few months? Jay, go ahead. Burst everyone's bubble.
What do I think is the direction of raw what?
Sword and Shield single cards in the next few months.
So I think that the first half of Sword and Shield is better. I actually think there's some decently priced stuff in the first half of Sword and Shield. The stuff that has already massively been graded. I would not want to touch anything that has not already had a chance to be graded a lot, and any set that when PSA was still at its sort of like $10 price where you could send it in. If the sets had not, if that didn't get at least like 3-4 months of grading of any of those sets. So we're talking about like, base, Rebel Clash, a little bit of Champion's Path, maybe a tiny bit of it, Vivid Voltage got a little bit in before, and some of the Shining Fate stuff. The newer stuff, like it's gonna, now it may take a while for it to get back, and $18 still isn't that cheap, that a lot of people still aren't going to send in, particularly the less expensive stuff. But like, you'd think that like a ton of supply is going to hit the market, particularly in the graded market. Now the single market might be different. It might also be impacted, and I wouldn't be shocked. If you can start buying like graded 10s and 9s at lower value, or lower value than the current single market is going for, I think it'll probably push the single market down. But yeah, I would expect it to go down just because of supply and because of these grading companies grading a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same opinion. I mean, the only thing I think we could possibly be wrong on is if the alt arts are just that freaking rare and there's just not enough to quench the demand, those could hold, steady at the higher grades. But everything else, I mean, especially singles and the lower grades, I can't see them holding it, and I can't see them not going down. That's where I'm at with it.
Can I respond to this guy, James Kinzer, in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So he's just saying that I like bash on modern, that I'm the reason. And Alex, I do blame you for some of this narrative. And again, tons of people have created this narrative. It's not just you. But like
earlier on, though, I haven't done that lately, though.
I know. But there's a false narrative in this hobby, okay, in my view, that there's some sort of cabal pushing down modern in people who enjoy it. And you can believe whatever. I mean, you can just say and keep repeating that, James Kinzer. I don't know you as a human being. You have no idea who I am. If you met me in person, you might actually change your opinion about me and see that like everything that I've tried to do on my channel has been for the benefit of every person that watches, even if I've been wrong, because we're all wrong sometimes. I'm not trying to create or force some sort of narrative down people's throat. And me sharing, you're saying me flexing that I have lots of modern cards doesn't matter. It does. The point is that I actually have a financial interest in me saying that. I'm not trying to flex. There's a financial interest. I'm showing that I have a lot of them, so that if modern actually did really well, unlike this idea that people who own a lot of vintage cards are shilling vintage because they want those cards to be expensive, so they have a lot of value. I would actually make more money if modern continued to do really well and everything went up really well. And I would actually benefit me, and it would make me happy because it would mean the hobby was doing really well. And it would make me happy because you would probably make money and you'd have a more valuable collection. And actually, even though you think I'm some sort of dick, which I don't believe I am, like, I actually hope that you have a valuable collection and that your collection goes up. And I'm not trying to create some sort of narrative. Everything that I say, I believe, and I think I'm trying to help you. Now, when you say, he asked a question like, that I bash modern a lot, even though modern outperforms vintage. What does that even mean? Modern outperforms vintage. In what timeline? What specific cards are we talking about? What specific items? If you join my Patreon, which you probably never will, I actually do rundowns of how every single set has done over time and each card's in the set. So you can actually see the data. A lot of data you get online, I'm just going to be completely honest, is very not intentionally cherry picked, but like, it's very complicated to just look at like this in this 6-month window. Yes, this product did better than that product.
Well, can I stop you there?
Okay, sure.
I mean, I think it's smart. I mean, I'm not trying to defend. I'm just saying, I think it is smart to take it at least like from 2016 on with data, because anytime before then, that was kind of before Evolution's Pokemon Go boom. So like anyone before then was in when things were dirt cheap and like, yeah, there's exponential returns, but I think from 16 on, a lot of modern has outperformed a lot of vintage.
Oh, certainly. And on a percentage basis, but a lot of vintage has outperformed a lot of modern.
A lot of the like ultra rare, the lower pop stuff, but like the more common, and even a lot of the sealed product has
many trophies, like all of the trophies that I bought. Top Soon, Cardass, Level X's have way outperformed. Middle generation
sealed though, like based on limited back down. Like even based on limiteds back down to low teens, I mean, that's like maybe a 5-6 times gain from like the 2000 it was at then. I mean, all the XY, like, I mean, Flash Fire, Phantom Forces base, Furious Fist, Poison.
But I have never been someone who would disagree with facts, with objective. So like, if you point to me now, as I've probably made pretty clear, like my expertise is not in expertise for what it is in graded cards. Like, it's where I know the most data. It's where I have all the data. I have decent data in my head on the sealed product. When I talk about modern versus vintage, it is 90+%. I'm talking about the raw cards and comparing the raw cards. And
are we talking about what, like first edition 10s or? Yeah,
when we talk about like how base set unlimited booster box, which by the way, I was one of the biggest proponents that said that box was insanely overpriced in every card in that set. That's why I sold everything, just because I knew how much was out there. And I was hearing influencers come on and say, there's probably only 1,000 boxes left, when I would know someone who had like 30 and many, there are tens of thousands of those, whatever. The point just being that there's a weird thing that's happened, which is like people are questioning people's motives and not actually listening to their arguments. And it's unfortunate. And if anyone comes to me with data proving that something that I said was wrong, like an actual data point that like I made a claim that was wrong, of course I would reverse it. And I try to be accurate. As far as like base set booster box versus like, a high flying, XY set, I believe you. Like, I take you for your word, definitely. And I have no qualms. I have no argument.
Well, I'm saying it's the majority of XY sets, or
sure. It might be all of them. And then when we take like your like ETBs, some of them performed even better or as well as some of the single cards I'm talking about. We're talking like I saw like 30 X's in certain cards, 35, 40 X's. You saw that in certain sealed products as well. So
few. Yeah,
I think
very few.
I think Plasma Storm, was like, maybe not quite that. I'm not sure how high it got. It might have
Plasma XY base, those ones, but very few.
Yeah, like the first ever ETBs. It might have gone to like 6,000 at the high or something, and they were selling it like $200 at one point. So that would be like a 30X. But it's just like, stop being dicks. Like, maybe you don't know that much, dude. Like, I don't know. It's like,
well, hey, let me expand on that though. Like, this is not you. This is not like really, I'm not even thinking about like a YouTuber when I talk about this. This is more like definitely E4, definitely a lot of chats, a lot of comment sections. Vintage like strictly vintage collectors who like are not about modern, they always come across more pompous, more like they're better than you, more like, you know, if you don't collect like the original stuff, like you're almost like a lesser of a collector. Do you get that kind of like,
yeah,
that presence off people?
Those guys are huge dicks.
Yeah.
I promise you, I am not that way.
You're not, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of that out there.
Sure. And like, well, there are people, I'll just be probably, you know, and this shouldn't be like, you shouldn't look down on these people. Like there are people who, in my opinion, it was sort of like they were finally the in crowd. Like Pokemon was super nerdy, right? And then it became like really popular. And then like these were the people with the knowledge, and it was sort of like we're the in crowd, and they kind of put down newer collectors, some of it. But again, that's 5% of like the 95%. Do you want to go to any place online? I mean, there's so much toxicity everywhere. Like I think it's a little bit unfair to say that's like the majority. And I'm not saying you're saying that or anything like that, but I think
what I'm saying is,
there's a lot of misunderstandings. Like when I say I have a lot of cards, I don't give a crap, guys. That does not make me in any way feel like I'm a superior or anything. I'm trying to demonstrate something. I'm trying to say I have these cards because it's a belief of mine, whereas some people will interpret that as like I'm full of myself or something, you know, whatever.
Yeah, no, this is not about you like at all. This is, you're not even mine. I'm just talking about like just the broad majority of like, if you go to like modern channels or modern like the like stuff, it's real positive. If they're opening packs, they're having a good time. Maybe you could say they're pumping products, they're showing products, but they're not attacking people who like collect vintage. Where a lot of people on those forums and things, they really look down on people who like aren't into vintage or into modern. Like, oh, that stuff's going to be worth nothing. This is the only stuff that's really going to be matter. And I just feel like there's a lot more of that on the vintage side. Do you agree with that?
So I think there are people who greatly underestimate. Again, I'm buying and have been speculating. I will speculate and buy in every single era and do and have all the time. Okay. So I think there's money to be made. I think you can speculate. I think you can flip, whatever. Okay. That doesn't mean that we should ignore the objective supply and demand fundamentals that are behind these items, and we should pretend that they don't matter. All right. And so a lot of people who are arguing, first of all, when people say pro vintage, they're unlimited bases. Like there's more of that than there are like Sun and Moon sets. So, you know, it's stupid to just say, you know, vintage, you know, versus modern. What I think we mean often in that is like, for me is like the rarest vintage, like the rarer vintage versus the less rare modern. Okay, but there's going to be modern promos. There's going to be modern things that are more rare than certain vintage items. Okay. Now, what we cannot predict is demand. So when people say modern is going to have more demand forever than vintage, okay, and that's why modern is going to do better. So even though there's more of it, the pull rates are much lower on the cards. There's many more cards in the set, so to pull the alt art is going to be much more difficult. And it's going to be a lot more popular, and kids today are going to collect it. It's like, those are fine arguments as long as you're not ignoring the negative arguments. And those are the positive arguments that should be made. And you know, but just be careful, because there are also some really good negative arguments, you know, which I've made as well. Now, when I'm on streams with like people who are really negative, I tend to be making the positive arguments, right, to counterbalance it, because I want to make sure that both are made. And as I've said, like in the comic book world, you had middle generation comics that ended up being very valuable or fairly valuable, not as valuable as the originals, because demand 10x'd from that period, which is something that could happen. Like we could be right now in a junk wax era, or the junk wax era could be in 10 years. You know, I don't really know. Or a Pokemon company will manage it and not print us into oblivion. But yeah.
All right, we'll take Northwood's question. Do you believe at some point Pokemon will grow and make Sword and Shield product increase at a rate of vintage and older sets? If you had to take a stab at it, not holding it against you.
Where is that
rate? It's way back. I basically went back to when I asked the question. I'm just trying to work my way down so I don't miss people. He's basically just asking if Sword and Shield product is going to increase at the rate of vintage and other sets. I could just ask a question about like a lot about like celebrations and generations and like, comparing things like that. And I would say no. I mean, I don't see like celebrations going to $800 in ETB in the same time period that generations did. I don't, I also don't see like modern sets taking 20 years to grow like it took, vintage, or not 20, but like staying stagnant for 10 or 15 years, just because it's a lot different market now. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't see it going as dead as like Pokemon went for that middle generation, but I don't see it like having the same upturn. I mean, I think I have pretty realistic expectations. I mean, I don't see all these boxes being $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like your very reasonable take could be like, yes, it has tripled the amount of product and more people are keeping them sealed. But I think the demand will be enough that although it will not grow as much as some of these other sets, it will still grow enough that it will outpace the S&P 500. Bam. And I can't say no. I can say, I think there's too much risk for me to think definite, but I can't, there's no people who are like, that's impossible, that can't possibly happen. That's also not, it's not, you don't know that. You don't know that they've printed too much yet. You don't know until after. That's the reality. If these boxes end up, crashing down to $50-$40 because they printed so much of it and Pokemon goes down, which is a real possibility that people do not want to hear. It could actually happen. Like, that'll really suck. And then Pokemon will start printing less. And then the next sets will probably have more value. And those sets will probably do better. It doesn't mean you have to give up. It just means that we way overshot the demand for a period. Those products are not going to do well ever, potentially, just like in sports. There's still $10, $11 baseball boxes you can get from the 80s. Okay. That even with all the sports boom, they've never gone up, right? We just don't know. But if Alex is making that argument while also understanding the risks, I have zero problem with that. And I can't, it's sort of like there are just too many unknowns, if that makes sense.
Well, obviously I'm like, more bullish than most people in this hobby. So, I mean, the way I compare it to like the sports deal is I just think we live different and spend our money different than our parents did. Like, our parent, even like our grandparents, they valued their life completely different. Then our parents were kind of like, started to treat, spend more on their kids, started to enjoy more of that stuff, but not completely. And then us, we like took it to an extreme. We like spend a majority of our extra income after, putting into things we need to on our hobbies. And people our age are spoiling their kids more than ever. And so for us, I mean, for our parents, they didn't really get the collecting bug as hard as we did. Like they collected, but I think we took it to a whole new level, spending like tens of thousands and, now hundreds of thousands of dollars on these things. And that's why I see like, the demand being different for even if this is like an overprinting time where they're not going to grow like they should because they're too much printed. I just still see it being bought and like the kids opening more of it now than the sports cards were back then, because our parents, they bought us a couple packs. I mean, most parents, mine did a couple packs of baseball cards at a time. They never bought me a box. They never bought me like a case. They didn't really, they opened a couple packs with me, but they weren't like Gary collecting it like on that level on their own. So I just think there's a lot more people, I guess, on not like Gary, but more of that level where they're putting large amounts of money into it as parents and for their kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that also makes it not repeatable what vintage did. The fact that there's so many people with that sort of mindset, there are so many adults actually keeping sealed product. Like Gary's literally the only guy like in the whole world, right? I mean, it's him and Birdman and probably like a few other silent people. So that's what makes things really valuable. That type of just like, it's worthless for many years. And then all of a sudden, and so, but as I said before, yeah, it doesn't mean that it can't go up, and it doesn't mean something is worthless or should go to zero or have no value. It just means there's more risk.
Yeah. Here, Puzzle Observer, is America doomed as a serious moral and military power if it has grown men chatting online about Pokemon cards? Oh, all right. You see any good ones you want to take? I know Pokemon Jim here always wants me to have him on sometime. I'm gonna have to do that. He really wants to debate some topics with me.
Sure.
If you see one, just shout it out that you want to take.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
Danny said, I regret not getting on the ETB complete collection. Train is too late. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's not a question, but I think the train's too late in both ways. I mean, I think the train's too late as the ones have already appreciated too much, to where there might not be a huge upside in a lot of those big, big dollar ones. And also, I think the train's too late on. I just don't see a huge future in ETBs at this point. I think it was the thing to do back in X, Flying Sun and Moon, because they were the products that rarely ever, if ever, got reprinted. And now Pokemon's completely switched the script, and those are the products that get reprinted the most often. And so, it was always seen that, we don't want to reprint those because we have to make the dice, the card savers, all these different things. But now they're no problem. We're going to reprint all those. We're just going to do it anyway. And so it might switch back to maybe the booster boxes are going to start outperforming the ETBs going forward now, because that's what they're reprinting. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a dangerous game to try to predict what the Pokemon company is going to do. But yeah, I mean, it sounds possible. I think investing is about speculating, right? So I think if you're going to speculate on Modern Sealed, that's the exact game you should play. And you should speculate. You should be tracking what Pokemon has done in the past, when they've changed up their printing. Why did they print more ETBs? Why might they print less ETBs? And then try and predict that as best you can. I'm not sure how predictable it is, but I think it's good. I mean, that's what you should be trying to do. That's what people are trying to do, is try and predict, how much of each type of item they're going to print. So.
North Bar Gaming said, I think there is so much vintage sealed in random collections that could easily flood the market if it all came out. Yeah. All right, Jake's got to do something. I mean, I don't, North Bar, I don't know if there's really that. I mean, yeah, there's still a good amount of vintage out there, especially like the WotC stuff or the early WotC stuff, but you think there's still enough to where if it flooded the market, I don't know if there's that much left. I mean, I think a lot of it came out during this spike with Logan Paul. I mean, that's when I sold all mine. I mean, I literally was buying all my vintage sealed for a long-term collection. Like, I mean, I had it where I was never going to sell it. That was my unsellable stuff. But when boxes you bought for $1,000 go to 25,000, I mean, it brings a lot of that out of people's closets. So, I mean, I know there's still a lot out there, but I don't know if anything's happening where it's crashed the vintage sealed market. Jake, what are you thinking?
What was the question? Sorry, I was dealing with someone quick.
It wasn't a question. He just said, I think there's so much vintage sealed in random collections that could easily flood the market if it all came out.
I mean, if it all came out, sure. I mean, if everything, but like, so I have been speculating a lot more on serialized stuff recently, because I love knowing. It does concern me paying really high amounts of money for items that we really don't have a sense of how much exist in the planet, how much are left, and then which collectors hold them. And it is concerning, but do I think it's what you want to be doing is you want to be tracking the market. Like, the best thing you can do is like see how many booster boxes are coming up, see are the prices still tracking down on them. I know from my perspective, like, I've seen a few big chunks of them sold on places like Heritage, and they've been pretty solid. Like, there was definitely some trending down, but a lot of them have been selling around the same price, and there's like 6 or 7 of them, every 7 days or whatever, and they continue to sell that like 8 to 12,000 to 13,000, depending on the box, vintage box. And so as long as like a lot more are not being dumped on the market at once, right now the market seems to be able to handle it. But any week now, it might not. I don't know. I mean, Dan's been buying up a number of them, and he's slowing down because he doesn't like the risk. Like, how many more people are going to be buying them at those prices? I'm just not sure. Now, if there's some really wealthy people and there aren't going to be that many more of them, you might see some wealthy people who have a lot of money to spend, who want to spend, buy them all up and push the prices back up, 50%. It's just that supply and demand stuff that we just can't predict.
Yeah, Mason actually said that he disagrees. He said that the boxes are massively more popular for reprinting, and ETBs are re-released when packs were in mass and then sorted. So I mean, okay. I mean, he would know more than me because he's got a store and deals with more product, but I just feel like the ETB is just getting crushed, especially lately. I mean, especially with the Darkness Blaze Vivid Voltage doing that, and the boxes not seeing really that much of a downturn when those happen, like the booster boxes.
Yeah, I don't know about number of booster boxes versus ETBs, but the old sort of narrative was that ETBs never got reprints.
Right.
The narrative was that only booster boxes got them, and then we started seeing reprints of ETBs, and that was what. And then the narrative was like, well, they only reprint specialty set ETBs because there's only ETBs of those sets, and then they started printing like Sun and Moon ETB randomly, like base set Sun and Moon ETB, and then a lot of that, it's like, oh nope, they'll do anything. So
yeah, it makes sense.
So I'm not sure about the whole. Are there more booster? What percentage is booster boxes? What percentage is ETBs? I have no idea.
I figured you said it. Someone was talking. Here it is. North Bar Gaming again, talking about how things will go up, but I believe $1,000 boxes are going to be pre XY. I mean, there's already $1,000 boxes in XY. I mean, I think as time goes on, I mean, this is obviously speculation. I still think each era can have $1,000 boxes at some point. I mean, definitely not majority, but like, I mean, I think it's realistic for Team Up to hit $1,000 or things like that. I mean, it's definitely not out of possibility, but yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of the boxes usually, I did a video on that when I was really early in YouTube, that a lot of the modern had been capping out in like that 300 to 500 range in the Sun and Moon era. And, we could see that just because that's a comfortable price point where people can still, make sense of it to buy, but then also maybe even open it for like $300 still. It's more of a comfortable price point where they start to get those upper hundreds or 1,000, there's a lot more friction for that buying. So that's my take on it. What do you think?
I have a question for you, actually. It's like, how sure are you, or maybe this is a better way to ask it. How surprised would you be if that didn't happen? Like what, like if that box never got to 1,000, or it went down from here, or this was sort of the highest point for a lot of these boxes, or close to the highest point, like how unlikely do you think that is? Like, are you like 95%? Like, I'm so sure. Like,
oh no, I mean,
I'm just curious.
I think as long as the hobby stays strong, they'll keep growing. But
what percentage right now confident? If you have, I mean, it's a hard question. I can answer it too if you want.
I don't know, probably like somewhere in the 60, 75% range.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty bullish.
But 60 to 70% is not like anywhere near foolproof.
No, Sword and Shield, like I said, I mean, a lot of those boxes, we'd be looking a long time. A lot of them, like I said, the tops, like they might see are in those 300, 400, 500 range ever. I mean, I just think Sun and Moon and some of those sets were really short printed. So they, I think they're still, if the demand stays relatively strong, they can do well. And then, I mean, early XY, I don't consider the early XY like modern. I mean, I consider XY base, Flashfire, Phantom Forces, Furious Fist, like vintage, because that was before the reprints and the massive print runs. So those are kind of more closer to like a black and white style, investment collection, in my opinion. And then like when you get to the Primal Clash, Roaring Skies and on, that's more like modern style print runs. And so, yeah, I mean, there's still boxes that are there boxes close to $1,000 in later XY still, but we're not quite there. But no, it wouldn't surprise me for, especially Ancient Origins or, Evolutions to get back there, maybe stuff like that. But no, I think a lot of modern boxes people always say that, like, they're not going to see those gains vintage. No, they're probably not. They're probably never going to be $1,000 plus a box. But for something that's good at from 80 to 90 a box, to 300, 400, still a great buy, in my opinion. Is your mic on? Hey, your mic's not on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that it, so a point you made earlier right? When we're comparing like XY, like early XY boxes, the growth we saw in those to like unlimited, like to vintage WotC. Okay. The part of the reason why I think that happened is people greatly underestimated the amount of vintage WotC that still existed. and X and Y just didn't have that. There just wasn't that much. That is, it concerns me the amount more. Like obviously I wish I knew like how much more Sword and Shield, particularly the second half of Sword and Shield, because like how much are some of those sets going to be printed compared to like X and Y? Because X and Y, I would argue, is much, much closer to Black and White and to the middle generations in terms of print runs probably than it is to our current print runs. And even when we talk Sun and Moon, as you were talking, like certainly like you had some seemingly pretty short printed sets. But if we talk about like the more printed sets, like Ultra Prism and Burning Shadows and some of these sets that seem to be like, pretty around Sun and Moon base when we talk about like, the ETB reprints and just packs that'll be out there. I just don't have a good sense as someone who like is investing, right, and speculating on these things. Like, I don't know how to do it. It makes me anxious to not know or not to really have any sense. And then to say, well, X and Y did it. And I know you're not saying that right now, but like X and Y saw that type of gain. So this will see that type of gain. It's sort of like to me, it would be me saying my level X's went from $15 to multiple thousands, so that means that these rainbow rares are going to go to 300.
I get it. Well, here
and they might go to 300. I hope they do go to 300, right? And I do think that it's realistic that they could possibly, but like to me, it's the same percentage, right? Like obviously, I don't think they're going to go to 5,000, and you obviously don't think Sword and Shield boxes are going to 5,000, right? So like that isn't the argument. The argument is more, is them going to 300 even comparable, or is there so much more supply that they're not even going to do that? And that 300 only feels low because we've been dealing with boxes, because we all saw the boxes that had so much less supply do that. And so it feels easy for like product to do that, but this stuff won't. I don't know the answer, but.
Well, here's kind of my rationale behind a lot of it is, I mean, what percentage of people, again, we were playing these percentage games, but what percentage of people do you think actually even ever in their childhood or growing up ever even opened middle era sets, right? I mean, 10%, 20% of people, mostly was all WotC and then came back, right?
Sure.
And so everyone still wanted, that's why everyone think all those boxes grew in value. Everyone wanted to go back and open those boxes, even though they had no affiliation with them. They just wanted to go back and open old stuff. And that's why I just think will happen with this stuff. Like kind of you were talking about, the percentage you thought was going to stay or go higher, or if they were tanked. It's like, man, if they would start tanking, if Sun and Moon XY started tanking, and I could get these boxes for $200, I just start buying them to open them, just to go back and open old stuff. And I think there's enough people that just want to go back and open old stuff when it's cheap enough. And when that happens, enough gets open, I usually that it holds the prices up, somewhat to where it gets to a price where people no longer feel it's worth it for them to open or have fun with. So that's the only thing that kind of makes me confident that they will hold some type of value and grow steadily.
So what happened with baseball cards in the 80s?
Yeah, like I said, it's just a different time. It's a different hobby. It's a different, I don't know. I don't think anyone our age.
Why would they have printed so much if it wasn't extremely popular at the time? Because the reason the companies printed so much is they thought they would sell that much.
Yeah, it's true.
So in that era, they would have been having the same conversation we're having, right? They would have been saying, the bullish person would have been saying that, yeah, these boxes are being printed like way too much probably, right? Because you're like a smart, aware, bullish person, right? You wouldn't be like, no, they're not being printed and like, it's gonna, but.
Well, here, take it this way, like.
But I'm not saying I'm right here. And again, I'm not arguing, this is just the counter argument. It's just because we may not, that like, Pokemon may be doing a really good job of not of printing a lot, yes, but not so over printing demand that doesn't happen to us. And in sports, there was multiple sports. There was a huge downfall just in cards in general around that time. And on top of it, there was like a bunch of different companies all printing sports at once. So there's,
Well, I always go back to the lifestyle thing. I mean, I know you said your dad collects, but I'd be willing to bet if you take the percentage of, our dad's age people that have collections, and you take a percentage of our age people that have collections of video games or Pokemon cards or whatever, I think it's just extremely higher now. I think it's just that we have a different lifestyle. We spend our money differently. We have different values. I mean, would you agree with that?
That we have different values.
We
So,
like we
cards and Pokemon are here to stay more than sports were for the 80s and
well, I
90s.
think with anything, I just think like we are more likely to spend money on things from our childhood or on nostalgia than our parents were like likely to spend money on nostalgia, where they were more focused on, I guess, real life things.
Is that true? That's interesting. I don't know.
I mean, I just know, I mean, of any of friends I've had, I've never like known any of my friends' parents to ever have collections, where almost everyone I know collects something at this point, like at my age. So I'm just like, what?
I don't know. I don't think I know anyone who collects outside of the collecting hobbies that I'm in.
Well, not Pokemon, but like, video game collections or
yeah, my friends don't collect. It's just random. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe I'm missing. It's a bad it's a bad data point, but I don't know. That's the only thing I have. The other thing is obviously the age-old argument of, well, those players are only there for a short time, and then there's new players where Charizard, Pikachu are always there, type thing.
Well, I think it's not about comparing sports to Pokemon. They're very different. It's about understanding supply and demand and how anything, even something really popular, can be overprinted. So it doesn't mean that Pokemon dies. It just means that there are some sets where they overprinted that are really worthless, and then the new sets are very valuable when they start controlling it. When sports went to serialize and started controlling it, then it became very valuable again because there was still always demand. Now, what happens though is when prices go down, you can actually destroy the hobby for a while because people actually like the value. So overprinting can actually have a really short-term negative impact, and then it can take a while for that to sort of like undo. I very much hope Pokemon's not going to do that. If you want to ask me, like, where do I think these boxes will be? I think if I absolutely was forced to guess, I would say in 3 years, these boxes, like battle styles, like, and I would say battle styles, for example, is like 110 to 120, which shows that I'm not super bearish. Like, I don't think we're in a, I don't like, I wouldn't put my money on the fact that we're like in a, they so massively overprinted that Pokemon's going to collapse, right? But I also wouldn't put my money on like it's going to go to 300. That's where I'm at with it. But
I would be like probably in the middle of that. I was going to say like 150 to 200. I mean,
we're not even that far apart.
Because you're talking 3 years from now, not 3 years from release. I mean, 3 years from now, I think it has a good chance to get there. I don't know. Pokey Grinding, thanks for the 99 cents. And also Elvis, $4.99 super chat. Shout out to both of you. What are you collecting right now for fun, not to invest? I know Jake's has like 1,000 answers, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm collecting too much. I need to control myself, but mostly Star Wars, and I'm working on some sports stuff, and I'm still trying to buy some of these expensive Pokemon cards when they come up, but I don't know. It's I'm not willing to pay some of the prices I may miss out again.
I'm getting some Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. I want to try and get some of those like the early era blister packs and just some stuff to display. Like, definitely not investing. I'm nowhere near a Yu-Gi-Oh expert. I have no idea what's going on with the modern stuff. I just know what I liked, when I was a kid. And I recently been trying to, go back and watch some of the old episodes and stuff. But so yeah, just like some Yu-Gi-Oh sets, like LOB, Magic Ruler, Metal Raiders, like the early sets and like the early blister packs, but nothing too crazy. I've been like I said, I still am buying some Pokemon, but I've been putting a lot of extra money in the market right now, stock market, just because of the deals that are out there that I feel they're out there. And if it recovers, I'm going to switch it back to Pokemon, but I just feel like it's the right time to start loading up on some positions. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I might be too fearful, absolutely. I might be too anxious and fearful, and I should be more confident in it.
About what, Pokemon or everything?
Pokemon specifically, and maybe everything, I might be, and I might not be bearish enough. So, but only because I don't think I'm actually that bearish. I think if you put me in the room of like people who were not super into the stuff, I would be like an incredible bull, on all this type of stuff. So I think only time will tell on this stuff. And in the interim, I think that it's I'm very focused on like patience myself and trying to have fun and like hang out with people that I enjoy and not trying to rush things and just trying to put myself in a position where I can tolerate and deal with big swings in prices, because I don't think we're out of the woods yet in all these markets. It's been tiring.
So what's up with Collecticon? You're going to Denver?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Denver. What do you say?
Have you been to one yet, a Collecticon?
Yeah, I went to Charlotte.
I'm planning on. I want to try to go to Denver too. I haven't been to one at all yet, so I don't really know what to expect. Is it basically just like a card show?
Yeah, it's just a card show. There are like some panels and stuff, but it's mainly like we're all just hanging out like at like we like for this one we're gonna a bunch of the guys in the Patreon are gonna do we're gonna get people. I want to give people a chance to like experience selling and vending for the first time. So we're buying like a section so people will, like just can come and like bring their stuff and sell through there. We're gonna try that. So we're trying to organize it right now. If you're interested in coming and selling, let me know.
What do you mean? You guys are like get like just for anyone to bring their stuff to sell?
Well, people that we talk to beforehand,
okay.
like because we're gonna sign up names and make sure we get them vendor passes and do it correctly through Collecticon. But that's mainly what we're just gonna like hang out there and sell, and then afterwards it's just like a lot of drinking and yeah.
Pretty good time though, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was a bit like I was back in college with some of my college friends.
That's pretty cool.
How it felt. Yeah, it's fun.
Are you doing anything on MetaZoo?
I like MetaZoo.
Do you?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, whenever I'm asked this, I'm like, for me, it's like a 6 out of 10. So I like it. This UFO set could be cool. I'm kind of interested to see like will I enjoy it? Will I not enjoy it? I've always had the same stance in terms of like speculating on it. I just think that it got very hot very early. There was a lot of just like really huge optimism, and a lot of people buying this stuff I don't think understand serialized items in other hobbies that have serialized stuff. So like you can buy serialized cards of like really huge IPs for really cheap, but then like serialized MetaZoo cards are going for like $10,000 of a brand new IP. That's a bad investment in my opinion. Now it could work out, but it's just, now if you as a collector love it and really want it, that's completely different. Now I think the game and the creators and the people like have done a really great job overall. I know there's some complaints, but I think overall they've done a really good job. And because of the amount of funding they have and other sorts of things, I think that they're in a decent position to potentially succeed. And given how low some of the print runs are for certain things, if they are able to garner popularity and demand and grow over time, like the cards could be could sustain some value and be quite valuable, particularly when we're talking about like the sets right now. But like a lot of like the promos and some of the sample cards and some of the serialized stuff, like the prices those got to, just as someone who like collects a bunch of TCG and CCG and serialized markets in other serialized markets, it was like, whoa, like those are really very high. But if MetaZoo becomes the 4th biggest TCG or CCG in the world or something like that, and really like sustains there and remains there and is huge, and it's like the first ever serialized card that they did, like sure, like it'll be worth whatever someone's willing to pay for it. But it's just a lot to pay for something that's like so brand new and could
so other than those first or those serialized though, or the first set or like Kickstarter, I mean, with MetaZoo being released and then Pokemon still being printed, I mean, why would MetaZoo do well, but modern Pokemon sets wouldn't though?
Just I mean, why would MetaZoo do well and not Pokemon? I mean, the scenario would have to be that MetaZoo is much smaller and so it could grow a lot more, and that MetaZoo is mostly known in like these types of niche communities. Whereas if MetaZoo like really did get onto Netflix, really made a video game, really expanded their brand, like they could grow really hugely in sort of popularity potentially if people like it, which is a huge, I mean, to get some sort of like mass adoption into culture like Pokemon has had, like that's a massive undertaking, right? But like theoretically, right, if it could do something like that, or even a portion of that, the booster box print sizes are like 100,000 or 75,000 or 50,000 or 2,500. And when you compare that to Pokemon, which is millions and millions, it's just there's so much less. And these are like the first sets ever. So when you combine all of that, sure, it could do better. But if you're already buying in at a really inflated price, probably, or really excited, not just people who were really, really bullish, if that's like most people in the market already, like, but now that like, I mean, if you can get these boxes now for like 50, 60, $70, like I can see some speculative upside. Is not where I would speculate. Like I'm speculating in other places. Like I think there's much more established IPs that I would be speculating in than that. But do I see potential upside? Sure.
Question for Jake. Why did you choose social work over something like finance? You seem really engaged and interested in financial world, so wondering for the rationale.
So I've been a social worker for 11 years. And well, technically not, because you're only a social worker once you graduate from your master's program. But I've been in this sort of work for 11 years. I did a few years before I worked during my master's. So I've been doing this for about 11 years, and yeah, I mean, my mom's a nurse and my dad's a financial advisor, and I guess I spent the first half of my career similar to my mom and working in the healthcare field, and I recently left my job, and I actually probably am taking a job as a financial analyst right now to try it out, actually, for 6 months to a year is my plan. And I probably will continue to do private practice. I'll certainly keep up my license, and I'm certainly interested in continuing to practice therapy, but I'm looking for a little bit of a break maybe, or a change. And my dad actually was a lawyer for the first part of his career and then switched to financial advisor later on. And I do really enjoy this stuff. I also feel, just to be very personal on a live stream in front of a bunch of strangers, like for me, I felt like I stopped growing a bit as a therapist after that amount of time. And I want to do something where I feel like I'm going to learn again. So I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. Like I've never done like real estate deals, and so I'm going to be like analyzing real estate. I'm already taking like a lot of corporate finance courses right now. And I kind of want to try my hand at Warren Buffett, so I want to try my hand at sort of that sort of thing and see if I can repeat some of my success I've had in collectibles, maybe in some of those financial markets. So
do you have like your licenses and stuff, or have you taken those tests yet?
No. So I won't be a financial advisor. I might do that someday. Right now, I'm just going to be like an analyst.
Okay.
But a cousin of mine actually is a financial advisor, and so I'm going to be it's actually a cousin-in-law, and so I'm going to be working under sort of his umbrella, which allows me to work and sort of learn. But I hopefully I've been around this stuff since I was like 12. And to be honest with you guys, like with poker, which is like what I was obsessed with when I was younger, and I thought I'd become a professional poker player. So my mother was like, no, you will not. Very similar stuff. It's a lot of, you're sort of like every hand you're investing, like everything tells a story. Everything, there's risks and rewards that you're constantly analyzing. So I'm hoping that my skill set will kind of apply to this stuff pretty well.
Why didn't you go for the poker?
Well, I also, to be fair, got bored of that too. I played so many hours when I was younger. So I really like, I think it's great if you can feel like you're still learning new stuff, like you're still growing as a person in terms of like your abilities or whatever at your work. And it can, it can certainly happen to a lot of people, right? Where we just sort of, we might still like our work, maybe we don't like our work, but that we just feel like we're sort of stagnating a little bit, and maybe there's some time for a change. So I think that's where I'm at a bit of a crossroads, on that, and really just feeling it out live publicly in front of a few people. So
yes, I guess that's why you talked about. I saw a stream, I think you were Dameron, where you were kind of talking about possibly doing this full time. Is that kind of the conversation you were having with yourself when you left your job? Is just maybe try this?
I don't think yeah, I mean, flipping, reselling, and getting distributor product, like I'm not going to learn anything, to be honest. Like, I feel like I've already kind of done this. So I feel like doing it in some different markets is where I'm going to learn. And I also want to like become more legit in terms of, like I want to feel like I really understand like corporate finance. And I've always been around it with my father, but I want to do it myself completely. So
I think the main question then is, so does that mean all your videos are now going to be financial advice?
So definitely not. Yeah, two things to say on that, right? One is Pokemon is not a security. So technically we don't even have to say that, even though we all say it all the time.
Is that the truth?
Yeah. You can come on and give and say, tell people exactly what to do. And that's completely legal. Now, what they can do is they can change the laws, and they could make this a security, and then they could go after you retroactively, which is what happened to crypto, or what is happening to crypto. So you have to be careful. But more from the ethical standpoint, like the reason, like, I know it's like a cliche, but the reason like we cannot give financial advice, not only can we not predict the future, but put that aside. Let's say we were really like we really had like a really great sense of what was going to happen, like 100% or very close. We don't know your current financial situation, and financial advice has so much to do with one's current exact situation, earning potential, lifestyle choices, age. It's why a financial advisor will actually sit down with you one-on-one and will want to know all of those things, know when you want to retire, know how much your expenses are, in order to like make a real plan for how to help you invest your money. And we cannot, this is YouTube, this is education. And so why there are so many like stock channels and crypto channels online is because it's education, and education is valuable and useful, and it, and having these conversations valuable and useful, but it is not, we are talking about our own situations, and you have to be careful about how you apply what we say to you.
Yeah. Well, here, let's have a little fun game. So let's just take into account, okay, the people we're talking to, one, don't have debt, two, are putting whatever number you want to say, 15, 20% of their 401k, and three, they don't have a lot of time. Maybe they got kids, they got a family, and they don't have a ton of time. They do enjoy Pokemon. They want to collect it, but they also want to make sure they're putting their money into things that are going to hold and grow value in the future. If you had to talk, which is, I think is in my opinion, is the average people that watch channels. Mm-hmm. If you had to talk to those average people, I think that's why I get so much backlash of pushing like Miner and Sealed. Is I just feel like it's a good entry point where if you get in like below market value, you have a lower risk and you have a good upside potential. And it's easy for you. Don't have to do hours of research and find a lot. So that's why I always say that. But what do you say to those people? Like, what do you think is a good entry point or good things to look at or a good way to go, for average people who they're good financially, their life's in order, but they do have extra money. They don't want to go to concerts or go out to eat all the time. They want to put the extra money towards Pokemon.
I'll be completely honest with you. I would wait a year and I would see where we're at, and you might miss out. But that's what I honestly, in my current position, am basically doing, outside of a few very rare items or very difficult to find items. And part of why I'm going after really low serialized cards and other hobbies and like 1/1s and 1/5s is due to their rarity. Now that's very different than like, if I had zero collection though, let me answer it like this. I have 0 cards, I'd be buying. And I was in a decent position, I would start to buy. And I would start with, just me personally, I'd start with vintage WotC, PSA 9s, PSA 10s, Gold Stars, E-Series. Probably wouldn't touch the middle generations right now. Probably would go that. I would go I would start learning about the promos, the niche Japanese releases, but you really have to try to filter out sort of what are the narratives. You really want to understand like actual rarity. It's tough on that sort of stuff. But I think the easiest and most straightforward are those. I'd probably be looking for really mint looking like CGC 8.5s of like vintage WotC first editions. But that's also the collector in me, so I would not, if I had no cards or a very little collection, I would not wait personally, because I'd be worried that the prices might go up from here and I might miss out on some of this. So what I would do is just be very patient, and I'd slowly build my collection over a long period of time, with the understanding that it might go down, it might go up, it might stay stagnant for years.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because I know the age-old thing is timing the market beats timing the market. But when the market, maybe I missed out from the tops, like in the stock market, but there was a good, probably a whole year where, I was putting money, like I'm self-employed, so I don't have a 401k, so I have a SEP, self-employed retirement fund. So I was still putting my money in, but I wasn't buying anything. I was just holding my cash in my account without positions. And so, that's the same type of thing can be Pokemon. You can still put money aside every month that you would have spent and wait to where you have that stockpile there. And so, I think that's always, like I said, not financial advice, but, there's goods and bads both ways. There's goods just dollar cost averaging, just buying every single month all the time. There's also goods when you see certain situations, you can maybe come out ahead, making those types of waits or plays. And
with like modern sealed, like what you're doing and what you're talking about, like it definitely could work out. My concern is just that it's just make sure that people understand, right, that out there, right, just factor in those fees, factor in the difficulty to sell. Make sure you're doing that and understanding like how much percentage you really need to return in order to like feel good about it. But as I've said before, like I bought in at those boxes at like $68, $71 and $95, because at those prices I felt it was worth the risk. So clearly I'm not someone who thinks we're in a, if I really felt very strongly we're in a junk wax era, I would not touch any of that, with at all, right? So I don't think that, but I also think that there's a chance that we might be.
Actually, another question, like this is just a random, did you crack a lot of cards?
Do I crack a lot of cards? No. And I actually do have a pile that I've been building up. I've probably cracked maybe 15 to 20 cards in my time in the hobby, but I do have a pile of about like 20-ish or so to 30 potential ones. And there's probably a lot more depending on like over time, if prices really go up on some stuff. Because I bought.
Do you think there's good chances at that, like going from 9 to 10 these days, or are they just too strict on the 10s, you think?
So I will say, for people who watch Dan is more of a risk taker than I am, 100%. So okay. Dan does things that I think are way too risky, but he views it as like it's mainly the upside play that makes sense. So even if he thinks there's enough of a chance that he'll get it, that it financially it makes sense for him. And basically worst case scenarios, he cracks the CGC 9 and then grades it and it's a PSA 9 and it still sells for more. And then if it happens to, when he's cracking like 9.5 CGCs to try to get 10s, like you start getting into like territory where like you are risking losing money for sure. If they come back weak. If they come back 9s, and I would only do that if the 10 got me a really big premium and if I felt very strongly about how good the card is looking. And I'm just someone who like, I don't enjoy that process. It's kind of annoying. It's not something I want to spend time doing in the hobby. So
there's just a lot of those. The reason I asked is, because I know you talk about it sometimes. So there's just so many cards that have sub 100, 70 pop reports where there's like a 10x or more, parity between 9 and 10, where it's like, gosh, this is worth it. If it gets to 9 again, you lose the grading fee and the shipping. But if it gets to 10, it's a home run.
Yeah. One thing I want to say that I hope everyone can get is like I very much believe Alex and I are like, we have good intentions. I see some people talking in the chat. And so they're saying positive things, actually. Like, I think people are coming around a little bit on other side. And if you actually I think part of what happened is there was a little bit of when Alex, when you say that you're only 60 to 70% sure, and when you say that you wouldn't be surprised if it was only 150 to 200 and not 300 to 500, it's that seems so reasonable. Right? whereas if the argument is it's definitely 300 to 500 and there's no chance that it goes down to 50%, and I think that some people feel that that they're mischaracterizing your position, just like I think people are on the other side potentially are mischaracterizing mine. When in reality, both of us are a little bit closer together. Just Alex is more bullish than me on this stuff, and he but probably by a 30% margin.
Right.
And if Alex might be dead right on it. You know what I mean? I might be dead right. We might both be wrong. It might be lower, it might be higher. So, just taking the information but I do think the sort of the any sort of rhetoric around people are making arguments to try to shill their stuff or these types of things, just stop. I know not a lot is happening in the hobby and people are bored and stressed out, but let's just enjoy each other's company and hang out. Alex and I can be friends. It's fine.
I think a lot of it, I think I was coming off, we talked about it before. I was coming into YouTube on the back of a lot of the, kind of the unscrupulous YouTubers, really, that were really pushing stuff for no reason. And so then I think I got a lot of backlash for making the case for Modern, which made me want to fight back because I was hearing, bearish points on Modern all over. So I think it made me fight back a little more than I needed to or should have, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there were just a couple of videos you made that when I had the feeling, and we've talked about this privately, but that I felt you were feeling really attacked. And so you were saying that instead of my point of view coming from a place of genuineness, it was coming from a place there were some sort of people in the hobby who, I know you had a couple of videos where it was sort of a vintage is dead, modern is what people love, right? And it's well, that's not what the evidence suggests, although everything is very popular. And modern certainly is the most popular, as it always is. And modern by far is selling the most, as it always is. But it was a feeling of people like me and maybe others were the only ones keeping vintage alive. And if we stopped telling people that vintage was good, this full move to only investing and speculating in modern would happen. I actually think it's an interesting idea and concept. I'm not super against the philosophical thing, but the way it felt was that you were saying I was trying to do that, or people were trying to do that, you know what I mean, actively, when in reality people are sharing their opinions. Similarly, I think when Gary for many years said Japanese is not investable at all, I don't think Gary was manipulating the market or manipulating towards his collection. I really don't believe that. I think he was sharing genuine opinion. So I think it's good to share a different opinion, saying that, hey, is it possible that vintage falls out of favor and that modern stuff is the most popular and stays the most popular forever? I counter, right, with that's not what we see in other hobbies. We see the most expensive stuff being the first appearances, the first type of stuff. And my concern, right, about the Sword and Shield era will be it's very high printed, but then the next era, will they have shiny alternative arts, or shiny gold alt arts that look amazing? And it's well, then what does that do to this? So it's when they keep improving the look and changing and picking on those things that work, I don't think that I'd be concerned that it's going to have to compete with the next modern sets. And I think WotC has to compete with that stuff too, but I also think WotC has its own sort of first ever thing that no matter how many more sets are created in Pokemon, it'll always be the first generation. And I do think that when we look at other hobbies, you just see a pattern of that stuff being very valuable, even if people think it's ugly or not as attractive. but I could be wrong. Like anyone can be wrong. So it's not so much like, but I think some people here heard that as like, I hate modern, or people hate modern, you know, there's like, there was a little, and then people started like throwing out data and facts, trying to like disprove each other. And, you know, the full picture is complicated. And it also depends on which sales you pick, right? Because like you and I could pick, like I can take 2 data points of a certain card and like make it look a certain way, but really one of the data points was a huge outlier, like a Neo Gen first edition Lugia. Like
Right.
that one of them sold at 120,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that went from 2,000 to 120,000. That's a 60x, right? If I use those two data points. But if I use like the 30K data point, then we're only, you know, which is like more what it is now. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very easy to skew data to support a narrative rather than like sharing. And it's hard to share all the data because there's so much data too. And there's so many different data points. And I think part of what's cool, like we can get to a place, right? Like no one can keep track of all the data on everything. There's just way too much.
Well, especially
so
with all
like,
the auction houses now.
Yeah. So like someone like you who's like really plugged in on the booster boxes, you know, can give really good, accurate data on like what's going on there, right? You know, people who are more plugged in on other parts of the market can give good, accurate data. And it can be more of like everyone's working as a team to like inform people rather than it's like who's the smartest and who's the most right. And, you know, our ego's getting the best of us, that sort of thing.
What I'm just waiting is, like I said, I'm really waiting to see this next like 5 years play out and see if like there's another uptrend. And also I want to see like, I don't know how much attention you paid a black and white, but it's like, or black and white in the era before black and white. It's like, I want to see how Sun and Moon and XY perform and are still selling, and are, as how the liquidity of them compared to those eras, like when they are quote unquote like not quite vintage, not quite, but almost more vintage. Because I don't know. I just think the demand and popularity for these newer eras are going to outweigh those more middle eras. That's why I'm bullish on it.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, right, how that compares or how much that matters versus because even if the demand way outweighs, the supply might be so low that it still doesn't matter. And that's just what we don't know. But the Sword and Shield booster boxes are so cheap compared to what those middle era boxes are already. So would I personally rather buy like a $6,000 Majestic Dawn, or would I rather buy, you know, a $76 battle style or $70 battle style? Which one's going to do better? I don't know. I would be more anxious to buy the Majestic Dawn because it's such a high price point. But it's just I really don't know what's going to happen, you know?
When it goes back to like your whole like price conversation about, you know, it's very dangerous chasing prices, because it's like you can look at these older boxes and they cost whatever thousands of dollars, and you look at like the best hit cards in there and they're here, but then you look at maybe a XY box or something, or you know, and they're way less, but the hit cards in a 10 are still around the same price, and you're just like, well, this doesn't make sense. I can just open these instead of opening these sets. I can get a lot more for my money here, more bang for my buck. So, I mean, you know, I think that's going to help the pack crackers, the Twitch streamers, the whatnot streamers, and, you know, make more of that product disappear from the market, which, you know, usually pushes the price of the sealed up more. I mean, obviously just speculation, but.
And I really believe that most of the people who are like being very negative or like hating on you are like, some people are they just want to like make people feel bad and whatever, but like a lot of them, they're just worried about people. Like they're worried that the over bullishness is going to hurt people. But I think, guys, what you have to think is that like people have different sort of like, some people are like more cautious, some people are more like yes, there's risk, but like let's do it and let's go for it. And I think you see this in the Pokemon community too, but both people are being honest about like how they go about things. And I think that like if you give like negative bearish perspectives all the time, like you get people to buy nothing. But what if it all goes up? You know, then Alex was correct, and people who were following that or engaged in that actually, you know, spent wisely or whatever. You know, at the end of the day, people need to make their own decisions, obviously, and and need to listen to everything, and it's their own sort of responsibility. But it's there's a I do think there's an over worrying, and I think I'm probably and again, I think this goes exactly what you were saying before, Alex. Like this goes to like people got so burned by a lot of these people that there's like a bit of an overreaction to like any sort of positivity right now. Like anyone says anything positive, it's like, but and I do think that that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't mind speaking my mind. It gets me in trouble, but I just feel like there are legitimately collectors out there who literally just collect. But I just feel like it's becoming such a cop out these days with everyone just saying, "Oh, I don't care. I'm just collecting. I don't care what the prices get to." And in my mind, I'm thinking, I mean, I'm not gonna say no one. There's always those people. I mean, I think Basic Trainer is one of them, but most everyone out there is not spending thousands of dollars on something and they don't care what happens to it. That's just illogical. And it's just like for you to say you're spending hundreds and thousands of dollars month in, month out, year in, year out, and you don't care what happens, it's just for your collection. I just think there's too much of that. I just don't always buy it. I mean, I don't know where you stand on that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like my response when Basic Trainer says that is sort of like, and I'll be completely blunt to him, he's very blunt with me, is like, doth protest a little too much. I don't know. It feels a little bit like he wants that, like that is sort of his principle, which I respect, right?
He
Like
may be that guy. He may be that one guy
like,
that he's
and I think it's sort of like I need, like he talks to me sometimes like he says to me like if I looked at the hobby like you, I wouldn't enjoy it or something, right? Like that he like needs, for him and his process in the hobby, he needs to have the attitude of like every time a card goes into my collection is worth 0. It is a little interesting how much he loves the market psychology talk that I bring. If he it, and I'll meet him in person, we'll hang out. Basic, I really like Basic. I think he's a really good guy. Even though I think he's been a bit hard on me and my Patreon, but that's but whatever. But I
and also why are they watching Pokemon finance channels?
Well, I think people like, I do have the reaction that like people are being dicks like a lot, like that, and I probably overreact, like I find it kind of dickish to like tell people what they should enjoy or what they should collect or what is definitely going to be valuable or what's definitely not going to be valuable, or there's a lot of like or saying like, yeah, talking money at all is bad, or grading's bad in any form, or sealed collecting's bad in any form. It's just like it you can quickly go from like having like talking about like analyzing the market in a fun way to like just making statements that is going to trigger and upset people who like disagree with you, and it's not very productive.
No, and I've went back and forth with him a couple of times, and very respectful. It's just, but like just like Jonathan Murphy just says, one of the points Basic would bring up is person who could just collect is in a very different financial situation. I don't think that's the case. I also don't think the case is that, oh well, it's just entertainment money, because even when you go and, I mean, anyone, I guess maybe if a billionaire, but even when you go spend money, you feel it. Like if you go to Disney World, like you still feel the fact that you spent money on the plane ticket. And even if you have $1 million, whatever you have, it's just like, I don't think it's the financial situation. I think it's just, I mean, when you spend money in general, it does activate that pain sensor in you. And, you want to have something for that money, whether it be an experience or the Pokemon card, I guess you could say it's an experience, but I mean, you're buying something of value for value. I mean, I just feel I found it hard to believe that thing the next day was worth $0. Like somehow, some way, it was worth $0, that it wouldn't affect you or wouldn't cause any pain. That just doesn't make sense.
Well, there's always the thing of like if it went down a lot, then you could buy it cheaper, and that would be great, and then there's also the thing of like, but I bought it for so much more, and I could have bought so much more if I had just waited, right? To kind of go to your point. And so I think even as a collector, I don't really understand it, because, and the reason I started my channel to begin with was to help collectors make smart financial purchases or understand the market to grow their collection as big as possible. Because like my heart was with like my goal is to grow the biggest collection, or try to grow the biggest, biggest collection I can or something. Right. And just kind of, I like setting big goals, and then just like, and then I want to turn it into a museum and then give it all away. That's like my
give it all away.
Oh yeah. That's my long-term hope. Yeah. I'm actually going to start giving away some of my collection in a new series coming up, which hopefully people will enjoy a little bit here and there. But the long-term plan is to start a museum, and then eventually, sell some stuff or give it to a charity or auction it. I don't know. We'll see where things go. We'll also have to see like where my life brings and how much money I have in order to support myself, and whether my kids like stuff. I make plans, but I hopefully will follow through with these things. But the giving away is going to happen very soon. But yeah.
I mean, I just think of it as like $100 would not affect either of our lives a bit. Okay. But if I buy something for $100 and the next day it's worth $0, it still affects me, right? Like, so like, God, why did I do that?
Yeah.
I think that's where I can't see eye to eye with those people.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it depends on your perspective. So,
same thing with like a vacation. Like you take a vacation and take to the islands, and you have a terrible vacation. You get sick or something's wrong with the flight, the room. Like you have a terrible experience, so you're upset that you wasted that money. I think it's the same thing with poker. Like you still like it, but you were upset that you didn't get really what you for your money because now it's down. I mean, there has to be some type of pain there.
I do think people do have different relationships with money for sure, and like some people are very like I've even been exploring this, like, am I a little bit too obsessed with money because I'm going through a transition in my life? Money makes me feel safer because it gives me like more options and freedom. And I think there is a danger like that you can become, because we want to control life and we want to control the things around us. When we're feeling out of control, we can like become a bit addicted to money or some other sort of like power control sort of thing. So now to feel nothing at all seems pretty strange, but like I do think that there's like a spectrum for sure of people who money's a lot more important to their sense of self and identity and success versus other people. And I also think for every individual, it can shift and change over time. Like, I don't think it's a stagnant thing. And I think there are times in people's lives where they're more sort of like connected, or they have more of that negative feeling and money is more important. And then times when it's less. Obviously, it also has to do with like people's current financial situation. But I know insanely rich people who are obsessed with money and control that money gives and that sort of thing. And then I know people who paycheck to paycheck who like don't think about money that much and, or whatever. So it's there's also, it's very interesting, like people's relationship with money and where that stems from. But yeah, it feels a little bit aggressive to say basic statements about I care zero at all like about money around my collection, like absolutely none.
That's why I just wanted to get him to say it once, like just say you're just saying that to get me going, like I feel like it's he's trying to do that with me sometimes. Hey, so the pool father, he's asked us a couple times, Jake, what are your thoughts on future CGC grading cards?
What are my thoughts on CGC graded cards? They're fine. I don't really get the negativity. I'll be like, there's a lot of negativity around them. I think they're fine. I don't know. I think they like misgrade some stuff. I think PSA misgrade some stuff. I have like, I've looked at least 1,000 CGC slabs by now. And I don't think they do a terrible job. Like I'm not really, I don't get a lot of like the hate going on around slabs in the hobby. Like, I know PK really doesn't like CGC. And I don't know the full story, and he might have some like very valid reasons, to be completely honest. And I also find his hating on CGC kind of funny. So I think
it had to do with they weren't giving any 10s. And then after he got his cards back, they started giving more 10s. And so he
Okay.
missed out on getting all the 10.
So it was like a specifically yeah, it hurt. Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly frustrating. People who send to CGC and then although Dan tells me after analyzing a lot of the data and he did a presentation on it that he doesn't think it's that as much of a big deal as people think. I think we're still sort of like looking at the data and we're kind of trying to figure that over time. But putting that aside, yeah, I guess I was just not like, I don't feel like I talked a lot about a grading mania. And I frankly, I think I talked about a grading mania before other people were like, these people were talking about it. Like,
Where?
and the grading mania has shifted in some people to like way undervaluing grading, in my opinion. Like I think that there is a market, an understandable market for people who want certain, it takes an item that they really like, that's important to them, and provide and put some rarity on it with the condition. And I think having it in the slab and the protection of the slab is nice, and the displayability, and then having like a complete set of 10s or 9s or whatever creates another collectible experience. And I think it's really fun to grade and play that sort of lottery game. I think it adds all sorts of value that people who say it's like, well, there's just a little bit of difference on the whitening and this or that, like all that, like, yes, that's true, but also this stuff. So,
I mean, I know
affecting me.
I know Black Label, is still the highest, but like out of just a regular pristine BGS 10, a CGC and a PSA, what have you seen is holding the highest price on average?
Of Black Label CG or CGC 10?
Well, maybe not. I think Black Label is the highest usually, but like, what about like a Beckett regular 10, CGC 10, and a PSA 10?
Oh, generally the Beckett. The Beckett 10,
even just a Beckett pristine, not even a gold or a Black Label.
Yeah, it generally holds more value than
Wow.
PSA for sure, particularly on your highest value cards.
What about the CGC 10s? No.
So the perfect CGC, because there's like 4 10s across the board. I've seen some people. I'm not sure I have enough data to really feel comfortable or confident in it, but I've seen some very high sales that I don't think would have happened in a BGS 10. So I have seen some sales like on Amazing Rares and things like $400 or $500. I've seen like $1,000 sales on certain modern cards that I think if you put that in a pristine 10, there's zero chance it would sell for that. So, but I'm not sure. I don't feel as comfortable that like putting like, I wonder what it would happen if you put like really big valuable cards in those slabs, like how people would respond.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of anxiety. There's more anxiety around CGC than there is BGS and sort of the high end market. There's more worry that they won't last because BGS is just going to like, yes, BGS is not that popular, but like it's sort of like been here all along and will continue to be here. I think, and the Black Label is kind of more established. And when you talk about like the PSA, like the Charizard, from base set and sort of Gary's history of like creating those BGS cards, you have Logan Paul with a pristine 10 now as well. I think that adds a little bit more of like a pedigree in terms of like the like some of the most expensive cards, best cards, in the hobby, set cards, like being graded in that BGS case. CGC, I feel like has yet to really make a stand there. You do see trophies in CGC cases for sure, but I'm not sure it's like filled it out as much. And WotC CGC does real bad. Like I'm real bad. So
I think anything under like a 9.5 is basically you're better with PSA. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, it does. Like I'm buying like 8.5s at like 30% the value of 9s sometimes. Like they're just getting destroyed.
Of PSA 9s.
Of PSA 9s. Yeah. Just really getting hammered. And I look at the cards, buy the card and the grade, and the card looks good to me. There's some 8.5 CGCs that look like 6s or 7s. So it's also learning and figuring out the grading scales and getting a sense, but so much of it's random.
Robert made a good point that, if you don't pay for the extra grades, you can't get the perfect 10 because it won't have all 10 subgrades. So they'll just give you a regular 10. That's a good point.
So they changed that, I believe now. Like,
oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Like a few months ago. I don't grade with them, but my understanding is, a few months ago they
because I think that makes the price go up to what PSA is, isn't it? If you have to pay for the subgrades.
I'm not sure what it would be right now. I think it's like, yeah, what is it? $15 maybe without 25 with, something like that. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, so
yeah,
it kind of loses some of its allure at that point, doesn't it?
Yeah, particularly now you got 18 at PSA, at least for this month.
Market PSA holding the highest value.
Yeah.
I mean, I think PSA obviously is the highest value. I was just thinking. I mean, Pokemon Gym Hero was saying PSA. I know PSA is the highest value. I was just wondering how those 10s have been doing, because I know Beckett 10s have always been the leader. I didn't know if CGC was taking them over with the 10s. That was my. But yeah, because I haven't seen enough data yet to really know either. Mm-hmm. Jake, anything else you want to hit before we get off, man?
No, appreciate you having me on. Yeah, it was fun talking. Sorry I talk so much. I go on and on, but it takes me a while to get my points across. So I apologize for that.
Well, I had you on. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I only had a lot of people here all night and had some good questions. So I'm sure everyone knows Jake, but if you don't, check out his channel, Pokenomics. Does a lot of the same stuff I do, a lot more in depth. Probably knows a little more, has a lot more. And yeah, I'm glad everyone stopped by. We'll be back here in the new videos on our